I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth, and you're listening to the VonDubCast. If you don't want to listen to me gap in the intro and you want to skip right to the interview, skip about 8 minutes. Before you do, please consider doing one of these couple things that really helps out the show. Following the social medias for the VonDubCast, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you could do those things, that'd be awesome. Also, give me a subscription on the YouTube channel. That'd be great too. All right, welcome everybody to episode number 83 of the VonDubCast. Got a really great one for you guys today. Recorded this one probably almost a month ago now, and it was one of my favorite episodes I've done to date, if I'm honest with you guys. His name is Nick Walker. He goes by Sidechick. He's would he be a DJ, a producer? I don't know. All these words are a little bit interchangeable to me, and I definitely knew a lot more right after this conversation. But like I said, it's been 4 weeks, so I forgot. But he makes music. Let's just say that. He's an artist. And we kind of go through his whole story of growing up in Yellowknife, kind of through high school, junior high, his first bands, how he got into loving music, and then how the style of music that he created changed. And we get into the real nitty gritty of actually producing music and making the sounds and what that process is like. And like everything else in this world, it's a skill, and he's practicing and working hard, and he's been dropping some really great songs. He's got 3 singles out. Well, I guess if you guys are hearing this today on Friday, he's got 4 singles out. This is why this has been a little bit delayed. I knew he had a single coming out. It's called Polymer. It's out today. If you're listening to this right now, go check out Sidechick on Instagram. It'll probably be in the description. Go on SoundCloud, listen to it, and download his songs. It goes a long way. Apple Music. My personal favorite, it might be Polymer after today, but it was his Touchdown. Go check that out. One of my favorite tunes by him. He's got a couple other ones, Hey Chill and Abercrombie. Those are the 3 that he had out, and then Polymer's out today. So go check it out. He's really great, really fucking funny guy. Oh my God, you guys have to go check him out on Instagram at the very least. Go check out his music too, but he's just a really funny follow. And a little bit of background on this one. I had seen one of my friends, Lorna Brinston, had who you'll probably hear a couple stories about on this podcast, had posted about this artist she knows and that she likes his music. And I just checked him out and was jamming a couple of the songs. I said, like, hey, who is that guy? Like, that's really good. And she said, oh, it's one of my buddies from Yellowknife. You should check him out. And I said, do you think he'd come on the podcast? And just, yeah, I think he would, and kind of put the bug in his ear, and we were kind of letting it happen. I didn't really know who he was. I knew that he knew Lorna, and then I was talking to one of my best friends, Fraser Oliver, who's been on this podcast a couple times, and you'll hear a lot of stories about him and just what a special kid he is on this podcast. And I told him, I just said, like, hey, I'm having Nick Walker on in a couple of days. You got any stories for me? He said, oh, I better give you a phone call. We hadn't talked in a while. He's down in California doing school still, Fraser. So he calls me, and he just, probably an hour, we just go off on stories about how much I'm going to love Nick and how this is going to be such a fun conversation. And a couple of the stories he told me, I got Nick to retell on this podcast, and they are pretty wild and just funny as all hell. Like, this is, I probably drank, I don't know, a couple beers, couple White Claws, couple hit this, couple that on this podcast. I know that Nick drank a whole bottle of wine. So some of the stories probably get a little bit wild in this one. I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope that's, it's not too much for any of you, but I don't think it is. I think it's just good-hearted fun. This is how I would talk to people on a regular, Friday night. And I feel like that's always what I'm going for. The podcast is just trying to bring natural conversation forward. And this is as natural as it gets. And I'm sure if either of us re-listened to this, me or Nick, we probably would hope it would have been a little less natural, and maybe would have kept a little more things to ourselves. But that's the fun part of the podcast, is just letting her buck like that and seeing what comes out on the other end. So it's been a killer to have to sit on this episode and wait. It's really good timing. I really hope that we can show some real support for Nick and get this song charting or just trending. I don't know. Look at me trying to use words I don't know at all. Let's try and help him achieve any type of success that he's after. A great story, great guy. I'm sure he's going to be on the podcast many, many times in the future. Every time he drops a song, I'm probably going to at least try and get him back on and try and help tell his story along with his music. He does a really good job of telling his story with his art, but I think this is just a perfect format to be an accoutrement to whatever your art might be. And I think this is a great example of it. So I'm so happy to finally get this episode out to you guys. I hope you enjoy it. What else? What do I always have to put in these intros that I always forget and never write down for whatever reason? Oh yeah, follow all the stuff. Instagram page for the VonDubCast, Twitter page. We're getting the YouTube page caught up really quickly. A follow there would be great. We were really stuck on 69 followers for a while, which I wasn't mad at. Now we bumped up to 70, so now there's no fun to it. And you guys should just go blow that thing right out of the water now, because there's no more fun of just sitting on 69 like I was planning on for a while. But you guys had to go and subscribe, didn't you? Anyways, leave a comment, all those things, rate the podcast. That really helps. And just share it, pass it on to a friend. Word of mouth is the biggest way that podcast spreads. So if you guys could do that for me, I'd be really happy. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Sidechick Nick Walker. Bye. Record on this computer. Beautiful. Go full screen on this bitch. Stretch it out.
Hey,
My antlers off the wall real quick before we get started. Oh man, I think I might have to just leave that in and make that the start of the podcast, knocking the antlers off. What do you think?
that's not bad. That's not bad.
Well, fucking thanks for being here, Nick. Or should I refer to you as your DJ name or your real name? What do you want? What do you want, baby?
Nick, man. Nick's
All
fine.
right, perfect. I think that'll keep it nice and confusing for everybody to not know if they don't know our voices, to just refer Nick to Nick. That's perfect.
Yeah, really confusing. I only ask girls to call me Sidechick on the first date.
Oh yeah. After that, they get the freedom.
Exactly.
If they get the second one.
Exactly. I usually kind of like to keep it like business on the first date, Yeah.
Hey, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it all day. And just to hop right into it for the listeners, I'm curious just how you got into making music, because maybe I'll start by telling a little story about how I found you and started listening to your music, and then I'll let you kind of tell me the story of how you got into it. I was just on Instagram one day, and one of our mutual friends, Lorna Brinston, posted this track on her Instagram story, and I started playing. Holy fuck, this shit bops, like just, playing. I can't even remember where I was. And then, played it a couple times over the last couple of days. And then I had to reach out to Lawrence. Like, who is this guy? Like, ooh, you know him? She's like, yeah, he's one of my good buddies and he makes music. So I started following along, and everything you've put out since then has had me fucking bopping along for it. And I love it. So let me know, how'd you get into this crazy world?
Wow. Well, that means a lot, man. I mean, if you want like the origin of every...
I want it way back, taking back that 6-year-old.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, I mean, I started really caring about music. Okay. So this is like the genesis. This is like kind of thing.
I think I lost you for a sec here.
I was like 11, 12, like, they were like,
you're
like
back.
Like
sorry, I missed all that. It connected just as you jumped in the Genesis story. We lost each other. You might have to restart.
Okay.
Sorry.
So no problem. So yeah, I'm like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
And I'm mowing, I'm mowing these, our neighbor's lawn down the street.
Yeah.
For like candy money and stuff like that. And, afterwards, they invite me in. They're like an older couple. They're like 60s, and they're kind of 60s, right?
Yeah.
And they got records, and they give me lemonade and stuff afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I go into their place, they have this like huge silk screen of Jimi Hendrix, multicolor. And I'm like, whoa, like, who's that?
Yeah.
And then the Larry, the husband, is like, oh man, that's Jimi Hendrix. Let me show you. And then every time I would mow their lawn once a week, every Sunday. And then afterwards, I got to just listen to like a bunch of old, like, Zeppelin, Floyd, Hendrix, the whole deal.
Yeah.
That's what really, and then I was like, oh, like, it's not just like Billy Talent and All American Rejects.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then that was like a big part of my identity. And I was doing like some like soccer and gymnastics at the time.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I figured out what that music was, I'm like, okay, well, sports is over. Like, it's all this now. And I wanted to, and then I was like, okay, well, I got to play guitar. I have to.
Yeah,
obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
I got to be like these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad he was awesome father, but pretty strict growing up. No guitar. There will be no electric guitar in this house, classic.
Yeah, I hear you.
But he had an acoustic guitar, like that collected dust in the corner in the that he didn't even touch. He got it for his like birthday in like 2002 or something.
Yeah, every household has that one guitar sitting in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And during the summers alone, in like grade 8, grade 9.
And this is up in Yellowknife?
It's up in Yellowknife.
Yeah, gotcha.
I would sneak his guitar while they were gone, and I would like, I didn't know what to do, but I would like
piss around.
Yeah, wrong notes and try to mess around. And then one time I figured out, like, I actually like figured out like smoke on the water.
There you go. Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, exactly. And I showed my mom. I'm like, okay, so if I can show you that I can play a song, could you maybe think about getting me a guitar? And like, oh, well, maybe. And then I was like so nervous playing these like 3 notes because I'm like, I have to get this right. Otherwise, like, I'm fucked.
My dream's over.
Exactly. Yeah. Over before I started. So then I like just nervously plunk out the da, da, da. And my mom's like, how the hell did you figure out how to do that?
Yeah.
And then still my dad was still like, no, we're not getting electric guitar. No, we're not doing that. But then my mom and I kind of like had this deal where if I wanted something, I had to save up half.
Yeah.
And then she'd, pull the rest.
Yeah.
So eventually my mom convinced my dad, and I found this black Epiphone SG, Tony Iommi Black Sabbath kind of looking guitar eBay, and it was like $400. So after a whole summer of mowing lawns, I was finally able to get this guitar. And then when I finally got it, I don't think I even had an amp for it yet. Then I had to save it for a little amp with like headphones and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the homework stopped being done.
Yeah.
I'd hang out with friends, but and then gymnastics and soccer stopped. It was just only guitar. As soon as I got home from school, right on the guitar.
Yeah.
What I would do, because I
think I lost you again.
Lessons later on, I would do, because mostly self-taught. I would put my headphones for my amp over my ears, and then I would an ear pod or a headphone put in one ear, and then I would like listen to the song, figure it out that way.
I gotcha.
And then slowly I kind of figured out what was what. And Wolf Mother for me at the time was like the big like modern band for me. It was like they were like my holy grail, And then what really got me, kind of propelled me even more into music was I was in grade 10, and my mom was like, okay, well, this is something he's doing, so let's put him in lessons. And I got put in lessons at this music store in Yellowknife, the only one in Northwest Territories, at Nunavut.
Yeah.
Kind of anomaly. And I would, after my parents would pick me up at like 5:30 after the lesson, and I had all this time to kill in the music store, and I would go through their catalogs of like orange amplifiers and fuzz pedals. I loved fuzz pedals. And like they were, like an orange cab was like $2,000 or something.
Yeah.
$1 million basically to like a year-old, and so I'm like, oh man, like, okay, I'll save up eventually. I was talking to the owner of the store, eventually. And then one day after a lesson, he kind of came in and was like, hey kid, you still looking for a job? And I'm like, yeah, I'm like 13.
Yeah.
He's like, you want to start tomorrow? And I'm like, sure. And that was my job.
Working for Luigi.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
I worked at the music store all throughout high school, and then I met that's how I met the whole music community in half the town in Yellowknife, was through the music store.
Right.
And that gave me a super valuable learning experience. Like, I mean, on one hand, like how to sell stuff, how to sell the sales,
how to talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. And also like meeting the entire music community of Yellowknife, which is actually pretty big for the population. Excuse me. And I eventually got this this organ. It's called a Korg CX3, like portable organ. It kind of emulates like a Leslie or whatever. And a bunch of these old dudes, like I would only hang out with like these like 35 and up dudes, crusty dudes playing blues and stuff. And then eventually this one dude found out that I had an organ. He was like, hey kid, you want to play with us? And I'm like, hell yeah. And I'm 15, and these guys are like 35, 40. And my mom, my dad are like,
unsure about this. Yeah,
I'm not too sure. But then, it was fine. It was cool. I didn't, I mean, you know, I might've had a few drinks. I might've smoked a little bit of weed with them, but it was super awesome just being that young and being around people as old as that. And it was so awesome because I finally got to play like loud, like
Yeah.
loud rock, loud blues music. And then that was where really kind of like, I was like, okay, fucking, that's where I kind of learned like my chops with guitar and stuff. But during that time, this is when I, you know, teenager, I was like a teenager playing like rock music, reading philosophy, reading Ayn Rand.
Oh,
I thought I was up here, like I was better than everybody else, you know. Reading Nietzsche and shit like that.
Oh man, I think you just extended this podcast about 3 more hours just from that one sentence alone, because we got to go out the music and then we got to do a full Rand Nietzsche and Nietzsche episode after that. Oh, that's hilarious.
Where was I?
And is like Nietzsche and Rand, is that what you're picking up from those older guys, or did you come upon that on your own? Because that's something that I've just found, you know, Nietzsche and Rand the last like 4 or 5 years, and it's been life changing. But I would have not even know where to begin in Slave Lake, Alberta, if somebody, you know, would have handed me an Ayn Rand book, right? But I'm just curious where other people pick that up, because it took me just stumbling upon it on myself. How did you pick that up?
Right. Well, I picked it up from like the Doors. Well, because, you know, because any band that when I was, you know, like mid-teens, like 15, any band that I would like, I found like, okay, now this month it's the Doors. And I had a kind of ritual when I would come home after school. I would do homework, but my homework was, I watched like the same fucking 4 movies for like 3 years in a row. And it was the Doors movie, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and Pulp Fiction. And there was another one, I forget what. Oh, and Pink Floyd, Live at Pompeii. Those 4 I've watched probably like 400 times, I want to say. And then, well, okay, so, and then, you know, and then he talked, I, you know, learned that Jim Morrison wrote about Nietzsche a lot or whatever. And then Nietzsche kind of led me to like other stuff. And then it kind of led me
That's a door opener for sure.
Yeah. And then also I wanted to be in high school. I wanted to be an architect, right? And I kind of like ignored music for a long time.
The Fountainhead.
Yeah, and exactly. And then like Nietzsche and then architecture led to the Fountainhead, and then I led to Ayn Rand. And then I was kind of like, oh, Ayn Rand, like, you know, says like her whole deal is like, you know, like be dope all the time and shut up, and
even when nobody's looking.
Exactly. You know, so I'm like, yes, I'm a good person, and I want to be the best at everything because I'm the best.
Yeah. And for no other reason than that. And that was something for myself when I read The Fountainhead, which is a couple months ago, actually. I've never read Ayn Rand. And it was so eye-opening to finally find someone that I felt like I had thought so closely to her line of thinking all the way through my life, just naturally from the time I was a kid, about that, like doing things when nobody's looking. Like I always like making people laugh, and I would do it even when nobody's around. I would crack jokes to myself, just like as if there was cameras rolling, right? Like just you are holding yourself to this other ideal that society's kind of forgotten about, or a very small subject in society lives that way, but you just find it naturally. And then to read it and have someone actually have it like well laid out, like the kind of concepts around it and the virtues that help you live your life that way. My mind was blown. Like I've done probably 2 full podcast episodes just on the Fountainhead from that. So I can't imagine a teenager taking that kind of information and running with it. Like, I'm so glad. I probably needed that. I probably would have become some sort of psycho if I would have found that at 15 and not, 26 or 27. But man, it was so impactful for me even at this age. So fuck, holy shit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it helped me. I mean, it really helped me because in Yellowknife, like it's pretty, I don't want to say like homogenous, but like, I had like a pretty strong group of friends, but even in high school, like I like wore like I wanted to like look like rockabilly. Like I would straighten my hair. Like my hair is actually like really curly.
Yeah.
Still, but I would like get up in the morning, straighten my hair, hairspray it, suspenders, dude. Sometimes I would look like a fucking Blues Brother to school, man. I wouldn't give a fuck. I always tried to like differentiate myself or like kind of find my own identity. And Nietzsche and then Ayn Rand and like Schopenhauer, all this stuff was like kind of also like a way for me as a teenager to kind of like feel like I'm like smarter than everybody, because that's what you want to do.
Of course. Yeah. It's good that it's so rare for people to recognize that in themselves, because it's such an embarrassing thing, and everybody has it, but it's such an embarrassing thing to be able to talk about, but you're so much less like change once you can just talk about that and laugh about it, right? I feel like so many people are just walking through life, they don't even want to admit that, and I'm just like, fuck, that was me till like, 3 days ago. I was living my entire life as that the only thing that matters. Like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, yeah, so going back to like me and in high school with music, I was very like dogmatic in my approach to like blues and blues music and rock music and whatever, and all my pedals had to be like analog, true bypass, tube amps, no new guitars, like the Jack White thing, like only shitty Sears Roebuck guitars, hard to play, like hard to do shit,
Yeah.
And it never, I think in like so 2011, like we got dubstep like a year late. So
okay, yeah, that was my question with all this, because the sound, the rock and stuff, but where did that mix? And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember to this day, actually, I was just, maybe it was me and Fraser's other best buddy Chase that we were talking about. We were the three amigos in school, and we were talking about it the other day of both having the exact same experience. He grew up in Westlock, Alberta. I grew up in Slave Lake, so both Northern Alberta communities, and we both have the same experience of hearing this music and going, who is that? Like, what is that? And they go, it's dubstep. So we go home and we're trying to find this dubstep band. Both of us like completely had no idea. And we both did the same experience of going home, just like trying to find this band called dubstep. And then from that, we found Excision, Flux Pavilion, right? Like getting into that was just so mind blowing at the time. So you guys got that a year late. So like what grade do you think you're in at that point?
Oh, I'm in grade, I think 11. Because
wow. So that is a couple years late then. Hey.
Yeah. So grade 11. So that means 2011. I think it was around before, but that Skrillex, because that Skrillex album came out in 2010, I think.
Yeah.
And we like Yellowknife always gets things like a year late, but it was weird. Like right in 2010, 2011, people went from listening to like the White Stripes to Skrillex, like over. It was wild. And I remember like hearing that and going like, this is garbage.
Really?
Never like this.
Yeah.
This is sin. This sucks.
Yeah.
This is an insult to music.
You and your 40-year-old band.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
funny. And I was like, my whole like, I'm always gonna fucking play guitar. Guitar's always gonna be. And then a really actually funny moment happened at my grad. I was sitting down with, the grad, and there's like awards, and I fucking hated high school, man. I've got like a lot of people, but I really hated it. And I hated like awards and stuff, and sitting down and it's hot and I just want to get fucking wasted with my friends, And I remember sitting there like looking at my phone, talking to my friends, and then they're announcing awards like Beth at math or whatever,
Yeah.
And then someone, Nick Walker, blah, blah, blah. And everybody looks at me. I'm like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, go out there. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I didn't get any award. My grades weren't that good. And apparently I won this like music award that the music teacher would give out. And it was $500 for university or for instruments or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was an award because what I used to do in high school at every lunchtime was I would like set up the drums, set up the keyboards, and I'd be on guitar, and I would be like, hey, you play drums? Okay, you play drums. Bass? Okay, you play bass. Okay, we're gonna go in E. 1, 2, 3, go. And then people would come and watch us at lunchtime. And I did that like every lunchtime for like 2 years. I was never in music class because I could never read music or anything.
Right.
But the music teacher saw my initiative in music and was like, that kid deserves it because he actually made an effort.
That's the real spirit of what we're trying to teach in music class, and probably 99% of the people can't get it, but clearly this kid has figured it out on his own.
And it because in my head I was still like, no, I'm still like, because music was like, no, I'm not going to do music as a career.
Really?
No, I hit it for a long time.
Do you think you just didn't want to admit it to yourself if that was that dream because you didn't want to be scared of like the risk to take to achieve it kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't admit it to myself for a long time, up until like 3 years ago, even.
Yeah.
I remember like it was a little moment of like looking back, like I've always had these small affirmations in my life, like with music, that like it was always there, was kind of always music, but I never kind of paid attention to it or whatever.
Yeah.
So then anyway, okay. So then I we're going to university now. So then I try to go into architecture at Carleton in Ottawa.
Mhm.
Don't get in, of course, because you got to be like, like
cream of the crop top.
Exactly. Not that at
Mhm.
all. My grades were okay. I was okay in calculus, but nowhere near enough to like get into that kind of echelon.
Right.
What happened is I got into the reject program called History and Theory of Architecture. So
Nice.
you just like learned about, it was like art history, but focused on buildings and structures and architecture kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
And then, but during this time, my taste, my palette in music is kind of expanding a little bit. I'm listening
That dubstep started to sound a little less trash, or what?
Yeah, exactly. Like it started getting a little more like an electronic palette. Like I started listening to Rat-a-Tat and other kind of like electronica bands like that. Like Holy Fuck, they were real big impact. And Flying Lotus, Flying Lotus. When I heard Flying Lotus and guys like Flying Lotus and Gold Panda, I'm like, oh man, okay. So electronic music doesn't just have to mean like like robot sounds. You know? Like, okay, interesting. So then I think I'm like 20, 21, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get, and I kind of research like Flying Lotus and all these guys making music on a computer. Whoa, what? Bizarre, but okay.
Yeah.
And I find that they're using a program called Ableton. And, I save up some money from the summer from landscaping. And
with Fraser?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, you was telling me a couple of stories from landscaping with you last night when we were doing our prep work for this episode.
Fucking right. Yeah, that's a whole. That's another fucking. Ball.
That's podcast 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Saved up some money for Ableton.
Yeah, and then I dive right in, right, and I'm like, I have no idea how to use it. I kind of watch some tutorials, and then as the years go by, I kind of get like better and better at, this computer thing. And I start to realize like I kind of figure out like, I used to really like, I still do, but I enjoy this modern composer called John Cage. And he was a guy that, like wanted sound to be sound. Like he has that really famous piece called 4:33, where it's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. And the sheet music tells you to not play your instrument. Whoa, fucking boom, like blood, So then I kind of realized like I just liked sound, and I just was obsessed with sound and how to really shape sound and kind of make it like your own, and really sculpt it the way you want. And then I kind of realized like, well, I mean, these like, EDM guys, that's all they're doing. And then I really like started to research how to, do EDM and stuff. And it's like a lot more intricate, and you can get very precise. But the kind of trick that I've learned over the past 6-7 years of making music on a computer is to try and make it sound that it wasn't made on a computer. And that's very hard to do.
Really?
Yeah, because it's very easy to just kind of make music that sounds like the program. And the what I've literally, it's taken me 7 years to do is to create music that sounds like it was made in a world that you've never heard or seen before.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and because I can totally understand why I can totally understand why people, or even like old engineers like that worked on like some 41 records or some shit that like EDM, because it's oftentimes like you can say whatever, like Avicii or some shit, or like some generic EDM sounds like a computer. It sounds fucking cold. It sounds like
it has no personality.
Yeah, but it's really, for me, what I've discovered, it's really about like honing a sound and really treating it to give it like some balls,
Yeah. And it's so funny to listen to you talk about all this, because I feel like after listening to your music, this conversation makes so much more sense, and it feels like you're articulating things to me that I already know, just not from talking to you at all, but just from listening to your music. And I feel like I'm definitely going to do this now. Thinking in the intro, I'm going to tell people to go listen before they listen to the episode, to listen to some of your music, because I feel like you, the songs that you make, they not only are they clearly from their own world, like where those sounds come from, it's from its own world, and almost each song seems to have its own world. That that these sounds are coming from. And then there's an overarching thing that is you, that is between the songs. But I feel like it's so cool to hear you articulate this, because this could be bullshit, right? You could just be throwing words at me that, are trying to sound smart, but this all lands exactly with what I would, if I had to guess what you were going to say about your musical, I don't even know what the word is, like your mindset around the music that you're making. It's so cool to watch how it lines up with the music that I'm listening to. So if anybody is listening to this podcast and didn't listen to my thing in the intro, go listen to a couple songs and then listen back to the last 5 minutes of conversation. And just before we get any further, I just want to back up to that Ableton, because that is something, when I went to university, there was a certain point in university where the shows just blew up and EDM was everything. And all my friends went. I've never gone to a show myself. I've gone to lots of music events, just not an EDM show. Long story. We'll get into it probably at some point. But probably 20 of my friends, 25 started making music and started downloading all these programs, and they were doing it around me. So I got to see it a little bit from the outside, and I was just fascinated with the technology and the programs and all that. And just to let the people listening know, because the way I was always thinking about it was decks. I thought the decks was everything. I thought that was your, if you have decks, you can be a DJ. And I thought that's what all the stuff went in. And then my friends told me no, you can go get decks for use deck for $100. That's something. It's the programs that are the real money makers of it, right? And I've heard that word Ableton before. So maybe just before we get a little further, can you maybe explain to people what is in Ableton? Because I'm curious about it, and I'm sure that means other people would be too. Like what kind of functions are in there? What kind of program is it at its very base? It might be too complex to explain to people in plain English to a dummy like me, but can you try your best?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ableton is it's what it is. It's a digital audio workstation, so it's a DAW. Okay. Essentially, it's you call it music producers call them just a DAW for short. And what it is, it's essentially just a linear timeline, just like you have in, say, like Premiere or whatever you
GarageBand.
Yeah, or whatever. Exactly, nice.
Yeah.
And you have different lanes for different audio tracks or different MIDI tracks, which are like virtual instruments.
Right.
And on those lanes, you can put stuff like EQ, which shapes the frequency of the sound. Right. So you either take the low end out to make it more like higher and tinnier, or take the high end out so it's just more boomy and bassy. And then and then it's kind of just a process of kind of creating colors, palettes of colors and stuff like that. And essentially this is kind of true and not true, but all DAWs are basically the same. You got Ableton, Reason, GarageBand, Logic, Cubase, Pro Tools. Pro Tools is like kind of the old John Deere tractor of the whole thing. Yeah, it's kind of the industry standard, like what you'd score like movies on and stuff like that. What like Justin Bieber records are mixed on and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's still stuff on the radio that's that's just made in Ableton or whatever. And see, that's the cool thing about music is that music school is, I think, probably one of the biggest scams. One of the biggest scams.
It's up there.
One of the biggest scams. Yeah. You pay an astronomical amount of money for some old guy with a beard and a black t-shirt, and his breath smells like cigarettes, to tell you how he did it 20 years ago, where today you can make a dance hit on your laptop and no questions asked. That's the cool thing about music. That's the thing I love about music, is that there are no rules. There's none. There's absolutely no fucking rules.
Yeah.
There are techniques that you can use to create certain sounds and to make certain things sound good. But these days with music, and I guess especially with EDM, you have to break your software. You have to put 40 distortion plugins on one sound on a kick, and it sounds like shit. But then you take that sound and then you flip it around and then you pitch it up, and then all of a sudden you have this crazy whoosh, whoosh sound that you can play with later, and then it sounds and then it sounds unique. And then now, because the way I've figured out, because I think it takes a while. People always ask oh, how do I discover my own voice? How do I my own, just with producing electronic music? And you have to figure out your own approach to breaking the software, or your own way to do things like nobody else does. Really, it's the fine minutia that you do that in the end makes it you, that makes it really you. And my approach to what I do to EDM is it has to sound fucking stupid and funny. It has to sound like goofy, like, because I realized like, okay, I kind of used to like want to be kind of cold and removed from my music, kind of dark and moody and whatever. But then I realized, like, I mean, everybody does that. Like, there's a lot of electronic.
That's not as unique as you wish it would be.
Yeah, that's like, just like black t-shirt and like dark techno and whatever. It works for some people, not for me. Like, my style of music for me personally is, kind of, it's goofy and goofy,
funky.
Yeah. And like, if you think about it, like, EDM is like stupid. It's like funny. It's like, it's hilarious, really. Not stupid.
And you can take it serious, but at its essence, there is that goofiness that if you're not taking it too seriously, you can have a lot of fun with.
Exactly. And kind of, I mean, I'm a person that doesn't really take anything too seriously.
I can see that from your Instagram page. One of the best follows, by the way. Everybody go follow him right now, Sidechick, because it's always entertainment. And that's something I'm sure we'll get into after we get through the musical journey. But that's another piece of this that I definitely want to ask. And maybe I'll ask you right now, because I'm curious. A couple of years ago, when, like I said, EDM was blowing up when I'm in university, everybody's going to shows and these DJs, and you're starting to, not only is it the music, but it's the personalities along with the music. And those two things mesh. Whereas I guess that always was the thing, where personality and music, right, with rock. But I felt like there's this idea that because it comes from a computer, that it loses that personality because there's nobody playing it through, right? Which is a misconception. But you got to see guys like the basic example. I'm sure there's probably better examples than this, but I'm on the outside looking in. Nick Coletti, right? Like, super funny, getter. Like, they have this humor that they also bring into their music. And I was curious because I was going to ask you about those two things, like, separately, like how much of like the journey is the music and how much is the personality that goes around to get people to listen to the music and enjoy the music more. But then from the conversation we've had so far, it seems like I was thinking of that wrong, and they might be way more interconnected than they are, because now that you mention it, I can hear that humor in the music, right? Like, I can hear the goofiness and the the Instagram stories that you put up. I can hear that in the music that you make, if that makes any sense. That might be my wackiness of adding my own flavor to it, but it seems like that. How much do you think that humor and that personality comes through in your music? Like, was I off on that, thinking that they were completely separate? Is that way more a part of the same thing than I was thinking?
No, man, you're 100% right. Actually, 100%. It's funny that you mentioned those two dudes, Nick Coletti and Getter.
Yeah.
Getter, kind of the reason why I really was kind of like, okay, you know what? Like, I'll bite. Okay, I'm just going to do, it wasn't like a relinquishing, but when I, really got into his stuff, I'm like, okay, like, this is fucking really cool. And I'm going to try to, like, not make music like that, but like with that kind of,
find your own version of that.
Exactly. And yeah, you said it, like, that's kind of what I take, not inspiration from, but I kind of realized, like, you really have to interject your own, if you're just a person making music on a computer, to stand out from the crowd, you have to show your face, and you have to do something, man. Like, you got to do something else different. And oftentimes, like, there's only one, like, like you. So often it just means like show your personality, because like everybody's weird. Everybody's got some like fucking dumb shit about them, right? Show that to people.
Yeah.
Like what Nick Coletti and Getter did, and like, look what that brought them, right? I've just kind of it's really only with the past like year and a half that I was actually took producing and like the career as like EDM producer seriously, because there's one thing to like make music and then put it out and then to like have a presence online, but there's like like playing shows, there's marketing, there's all this stuff, there's submitting to playlists, there's package stuff, there's metadata, there's
it's a business at the end of the day too, if you want to get into it.
It's a huge sphere that that I've kind of only started taking serious with the past like year and a half,
right? So, but from what we said earlier, that it sounds like there was a good chunk of time where you weren't even able to take it serious because you weren't admitting to yourself that was a dream that you're going to chase. Right. So then that kind of shortens up that timeline of how long you have to really as taking it seriously, because that same thing with me. It's funny how listening to you, how similar our paths are of just like, I wanted to start a podcast for so long. I loved podcasting, but I was already on this track of, I got a business degree. I was going to school for this and I couldn't really change track. That's what I was on, but I just wouldn't admit to myself that this is something I wanted to try for the longest time. And then by the time you finally do, you have all this experience, because I was just obsessed. I was listening to thousands and thousands of hours of podcasts. So I had all this knowledge about it in one way, but because I hadn't stepped inside of that bubble that you just like talked about, of that business side of it, you don't have that experience. You might have been involved in music for 15 years, but until you flip that switch to when now you're taking it seriously and you're looking at all the others, not just the fun parts of music, of the making music and the, the girls and all the fun stuff, you look at the other side of it too. It changes. Yeah. It changes everything, right? Like I guess I should ask that, not just tell you what it is. Did that change a lot when you flipped that switch and you started to see, is that when you started to look at the whole other side of that circle, not just the parts that were really fun and entertaining to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that fact of like, because this was only like in the past, like I said, like year and a half, where I realized like, even though how much like I just toted like, oh, you got to be you got to be weird, you got to do it different. Like EDM's a club, and you got to play by the rules. But like not the you can be who you want to be, and that's better. But there's certain like in the business aspect, there's a kind of a way you do things, and it's kind of giving value, like kind of just like with any creative endeavor, like painting or like any social media thing, making, I don't know, like having a Instagram page, TikTok page showing people how to make food or whatever. Like you have to give kind of cultural value to people, and there's a lot of gatekeeping in EDM, and it's a pretty toxic. It can get a pretty like toxic at times, especially like with shows and stuff like that, and live shows like that. So there's a little bit of a club, a little bit of a clique to kind of get into, but like once you're in, and once other people who are like hustling and grinding and like doing it for a living, once they see like you're serious about it and they see that you're kind of providing value to the market, then they'll take you seriously. But until you do that, you're kind of just like making music alone in your bedroom or with your friends and putting it out on SoundCloud and Bandcamp, which is fine. Music, that's music, right? That's awesome. And that's why you should make music, is for yourself. But there is that kind of like gritty reality of like, you gotta kind of play by the rules sometimes. By the club.
Here's something that I've found in lots of industries. I'm wondering, I just want to throw it at you and see if it sounds right, if it rings any bells with what you've experienced, because I feel like a lot of times it feels like there are these rule sets, right? Like rules you have to play by. But you also talk about this individuality and showing your own and not caring about the right. Ayn Rand, Howard Roark kind of versus the whatever you know what I'm saying? But the way and that was almost a dichotomy that I couldn't really deal with myself for a while. But I think what I've done that helps me walk through is there's a lot of times in the world where there are these rule sets, and you want to just throw them out the window, but you can't, and you won't find success that way. It's not that you need to follow the rules. You need to learn the rules well enough to prove that you know them so that you can break them, right? Like Getter and Nick Coletti probably didn't follow the same path, but they learned the rules and learned the game enough to play it enough to where they could break it and find their own lane, and then break out of it and still show their individuality and bring it through from that. But if you try and do that too hard, if you try and to throw too much of that Howard Roark into it too early, you're never going to break through. You're never going to get those opportunities to learn and to see these things, and you almost have to balance those two things. And I found that a lot in a lot of industries. And I'm just wondering if you see any parallels to that in the music industry from what you've seen of it so far.
100%. Yeah, totally. I mean, I've only just started to like scratch at the music industry, and at the end of the day, it's the easiest way to like get into the music industry, the bubble, is to like just reach out to people and interact. And to, that's why it can be hard for introverts to kind of like exist in the music industry, because music really revolves around on like, I'm giving this to you. I'm providing, I did this now everybody else can do these things for me, kind of thing, you know. But yeah, it is kind of a balance. And it's, you know, if you listen to before that big Getter song that made him pop off, Head Splitter, before you listen to stuff before that, he's got like 2-3 EPs before that, and they all just sound like Excision or Trampa or like something like that, which is cool, and it's, you know, it's fucking sick or whatever.
It's proven, it's there.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like, he kind of had to, I've heard interviews where he said like, it's only until I just started doing my own thing where people started fucking with him. Right?
Yeah.
I guess like the Vine thing really helped, and that was, you know, that's kind of made him blow up. But that actually, it's funny, but that, I'm pretty sure that attributed to a lot of his like mental problems and a lot of like mental illness for him, where people would like come up to him at shows and they'd just be like, saw dude,
yeah.
And they'd be like, yeah, but like, I make music though. And then it's just like, you know, like poli-sci girls in bikinis like fucking rolling their face off, being like, saw dude, and he's like, okay.
Yeah.
This sucks, you know?
I just put like 10 years of my life into chasing this dream of being like a musician, and people know me as the Saw Dude guy. Like, sick. This is awesome. Actually, I think I saw an interview where he actually talked about that too. Like, man, because not gonna lie, definitely guilty of it too. And my whole university group, we did a lot of Saw Dudes in the time. Still do to this day. It's just
still do.
It's great. It's great. You can't not do it, right? Like if anybody orders a carne asada taco around me, you know a Saudi's coming out. It's just the way it is. That's science, pretty much, right? Like, oh, you got to have it. Oh.
Yeah, it's ingrained. It's crazy though how like I love seeing that. Like I love looking at cultural impact like that. That was such a landmark event. Like it, like Yellowknife, like it went everywhere. Like it was, the whole world was saying that, you know.
Yeah,
kind of nuts, and that's got to like fuck with your head a little bit, you know.
100%. Do you ever think about that, stepping into the music world, right? And I mean, I could probably make the same parallel for myself as well. And this is when you do finally flip that switch and start to chase a dream. And I think the scariest part of it is not even the chasing of it. It's just being open to other people that this is something you're chasing, because now there's a failure on the other side, like of the scariness if you don't achieve it, right? And I feel like that's the biggest thing that holds more people back, is just that not wanting to take a risk of admitting that you're taking it seriously and admitting that this is a dream of yours. And I completely forgot where I was going with this whole point now. Now I picked it back up. And knowing that, you know, it's almost masturbatory to think of it in these terms, but if all things go well, right? Like tomorrow, Joe Rogan hears one of your songs, is like, holy fuck, this is great. And, you know, puts it on his Instagram story, and you blow up tomorrow and you have 100,000 people at your door, right? Like that would be a good thing, right? Like that is in line with the goals that we're trying to create with, you know, trying to bring something to people in the masses and have them enjoy it, right? That is part of what we're trying to accomplish, right? That might be a fairy tale version of what we're going for, but knowing that is something we're trying to do, and that is kind of a little piece of everything we're doing is trying to get some version of that. Do you think about what if you did something tomorrow, one of those stories that went viral like a Saudi, and it took over the world? And when you think about it through the terms of the mental strain and what that put on somebody like Getter, and you watch the experience of it, do you ever think about that, of like the risk? Because just to put the shoe on the other hand for a second, for myself, that was one of those things I had to think about, you know, with a podcast that's very personal about talking about the things I am, like, that's my family too. I'm talking about them. And if ever this was to become a big thing, like I am bringing other people into the spotlight that didn't ask for it and things like that. And I've thought a lot about that to make sure that I am okay with it. And I'm just curious, with examples that are as open book as someone like Getter, that you can see the consequences and it all laid out in front of you. Do you ever think about that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of, partly that, like that kind of style of like, I guess musician is why I started like just posting like dumb shit on Instagram.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really to like, none of those things are to try to like have it be shared or anything.
Right.
That to show, it's to build up a catalog for people in their minds to understand what they're buying when they consume me, right?
100%.
I don't think I would kind of want that. Like it's it would be smart for me to start doing like a TikTok and start doing skits and start doing whatever. I might start doing that. I might not, but I kind of just want to focus on the music for a little bit. Like I have to start getting like, I don't even think I'm that good yet. I gotta get like, I have to like I feel like a lot better for people that I admire to start respecting me a little bit, right?
100%. And that's why I was struggling so hard to frame that question, because I agree. And I was assuming that's how you felt, because that's how I feel. And I feel like we're very similar in this. Is none of those funny Instagram stories, it's not to blow up and go viral at all, right? Like none of the things I do, none of these podcasts is for that reason. To do that, it's because we love it. It's because I enjoy this podcast. That's why I do it. It's not to get, you probably enjoy music and that, and you enjoy being funny and those things. It's just for you get something out of that. But then in putting those out, because at the end of the day, there is that in the long term, if that was to happen where something would blow up, that would be in a positive benefit. You almost have to think of it in that frame, because you could have, I'm sure Getter was, when he threw his first Saw Dude on Vine or whatever it was, in no way was he thinking through the frame of, this is going to blow me up into virality. This is just another, he probably made, like at that time on Vine, he's probably making 3 or 4 of those a day of just all these different things, seeing what hits, seeing what, like you talk about creating a catalog of you for people. Now, if they do find, you can go back and find out who you are and get a little bit more in depth in it. But in putting those out, you never know what is going to be those things, right? Like I'm sure if you talk together, he had no idea what was about to happen to his life when those words came out of his mouth the first time, right? Like, yeah. Like that's what I think about. It's just that risk of tomorrow could be completely different than it is today. And have you thought about all those consequences that could, those dominoes that could fall? And if you're prepared for that. And I mean, also, you don't have to prepare for that or even think about that, because it's just putting your own mind in a pretzel to try and, think of all the bad things that could happen. It's better to focus on the good, but it's just something I was curious about, since you seem to have a good handle on what Getter went through. And if that is one of your people that you're, like you said, not inspired by, but kind of showed a path way forward, if you ever think through those same terms.
Yeah. And I had actually like a really big insecurity for a while about all these, like a lot of like EDM, like not a lot, but like some, you only see like some EDM dudes back in the day blew up when they were like 21, 22. And I'm like, fuck, I only started to take this seriously and I'm 26. I'm like, fuck, 80. Like I feel I'm too old. They're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But then you gotta realize, like, everybody is like, there's no such thing as there's only your path and that's it. There's like there's no like, oh, you have to do it like this, and especially like with music or any kind of like endeavor or anything, like in business, whatever, like the there's like Warren Buffett stories, or like the KFC guy was like 50 or whatever when he started or some shit, right?
There's a million comedians that started at 40, and there's musicians, and
so that was, I kind of forget what you were asking me. But
I don't know. I feel like we kind of kicked that horse a good couple times. I kind of want to back this all the way up back to my Ableton questions, because I am very curious about the nitty gritty of the actual making of the music. So kind of what I was assuming going into this, and kind of why it prompted me that question about the Ableton is, and you answered a separate question that I was trying to get to. I'm curious about the sounds themselves, right? Like when you think about an EDM song, there's so many sounds within it, right? And some EDM is, they get a couple of things that sound good, and then they kind of repeat that throughout the song. And then there's songs, and stop me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but then yours, even when you're 3/4 way through the song, you're still hearing new sounds and new shit's hitting you. And that's what I loved about you. It's just when you release a song, I get to listen to it, and it's exciting from the start to the finish. Where a lot of songs, you hear it and you're what you're in for this whole song. You kind of got the beat. Okay, once you hear the first chorus, you know what the whole song is gonna be. Where you get hitting it with so many things, and you get so many different sounds in that. I'm curious where that all comes from, and just what it sounds like you were saying is you have to find each and every one of those sounds if you want it to be unique enough. Like you could sit there with just the pre-pack. So sorry, I'm trying to find the ways to ask the questions I want to answer without the knowledge base to bring them out. So like when you go on Ableton, is there like a pack of sounds that it comes with, like pre-made? And if you wanted to make music, you could off of that, but you're just going to sound like everybody else. And if you want to take it to that personalized level, you have to create your own and twist them and move them. Or am I missing anything on that?
Well, so someone listening to this podcast, they get Ableton right after this, and they just download it. You can download the free version, the light version, and it comes with some drum kits, like an 808 or a 909,
Mhm.
and then it has some like synth patches, and then you can make a song with it. You can make a song like that.
Mhm.
But then also everybody has, like, I'll have that I've collected over the years, like a bunch of like samples, like drums, synths, percussion, different kinds of claps, snares, different kinds of leads, different kinds of whatever. But then and then there's also the wonderful world of sound design, which is where you take a VST or a synth, something called which is called Serum. And that's one of many digital synths where you start off with a basic sine wave, which is a sinusoidal wave like that. The kind of basic, just one tone, or you can make it and give it more harmonics, which is like either a saw wave or a triangle wave. It makes it a little more distorted, and then after that, and it's kind of helpful to think of in the sense of a music like a river, or like a flow of water, flowing through different eddies and valleys and going through rivers and waterfalls and whatever. So it's because it's really sound. It's electricity, right? It's an electrical signal going through different kinds of filters, envelopes, amplitude modulators. And then so afterwards you have a tone, right? And then you can put it through something called like an envelope filter, which is, it controls the attack, decay, sustain, and release. So the attack is it's either like short, like immediately, or like that. And then the decay is when you're done, how
quickly does it fade out?
Does it fade out? And then sustain is how long does it stay? And then release, when you're done playing the note, how long does it kind of stay there for? So just with those two things, you can have a lot of different ways of making sounds. And that's kind of how they made a lot of like the old, like if you have an organ from or like one of those like family organs that you find in your grandparents' house, and it has like flute, violin, oboe, whatever.
Right.
Those settings are just different combinations and different octaves of square waves, sine waves, and triangle waves and sine waves interacting with each other.
Right.
But then afterwards, you can get a lot more complex, and then you can put something called an LFO onto another parameter. So say LFO means a low frequency oscillator, and all that means is it's a thing going up and down. So it's just a signal going from -1 to +1, just like
repeatedly.
that. Yeah, and then so you can put this motion on, say, anything. You can put it on a volume, so you can make something go wah 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 wah, or you can put it on a pitch. On the pitch, so it goes wah roll 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 roll, or you can put it on a filter, which is I don't know if this is getting really boring.
No, I'm so locked into this. I'm loving it. Keep going, because I'm fascinated, and usually when I'm fascinated, the listeners are fascinated. So keep it going. I have lots of questions to follow up when you're ready.
All right, word. Okay, or you can put it on something, on EQ or a filter, which filters out something called a low pass filter, say, which low pass just means it only lets through the low information. So the low end, the rumbly sounds, not the high end.
Right. So
you can put this motion on controlling the amount of high end information,
right,
that the sound is
releasing.
Is releasing, yeah.
So,
and that's then what that is there is the kind of essence of a wub in dubstep. So you can, all like a wub is a low pass being modulated. Whoa, and then so from there, like you have different kinds of filters and different kinds of combinations of sounds that you can have interacting with each other.
Right.
You can put distortion on it. You can put, different kinds of effects on it. You can compress it, and compression is a huge component in a lot of music. And compression,
I hear that a lot. I hear that word compression a lot, even in just regular audio for like podcasts and stuff. It sounds important. I don't know what it is, but it sounds important.
Yeah, essentially, like in EDM terms or audio music terms, if you want, it's sounds sound louder if they're more equal over time. So the more dynamic, like high and then quiet a sound is, our ears hear things in relation. So in order for something to sound like loud, something has to be quiet. There's another sound has to be quiet. But so like a good example, and like things sound loud when they're consistent over time. So a good example is if you play a little bit of like noise, like so noise, like noise is say like static on your TV or something when there's a channel. If you played a millisecond of that, it would go like you would kind of not hear it. But if you were to play a bunch of constant static over a long period of time, it's very loud and very hard to listen to.
Yeah.
So what compression does is you kind of set a threshold so that when a sound goes over a certain decibel, the compression pushes it down a certain frequency or a certain amplitude, rather, a certain level, so that instead of the sound like a sound wave amplitude going like blah 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 in volume, it's a little more.
It's capped.
It's a little more even. And limiting is essentially just like the kind of brick wall, like no sound, no volume.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And so that's how you get stuff to sound. That's how you get like EDM, like stuff like dubstep, trap to sound really loud. You just compress and limit the dick out of everything. You put it all together, and then you compress that again, and it's just a big fucking wall of sound. That
my favorite.
Yeah, when you play it on a big sound system, it just rattles you.
Yeah, which is always my favorite. I like getting kicked right in the chest by my shit. That's all my friends were so into the EDM scene, and I never went to show it. I mean, we're going to correct this. We already have plans to correct this in the future once it's allowed. But thank you for giving me that breakdown. That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm very curious about. Yeah,
less of a basic, really, really basic verbal breakdown of kind of how sound works.
For sure. And I'm sure if you could, I'm sure it would make probably twice as much sense if you actually had Premiere or GarageBand up and you could show me kind of what you're thinking. But I have a lot of follow-ups just on that breakdown.
Sick.
And I feel like maybe one question I can start off with, I think I'm going to have to ask a bunch more questions to get to this place for you to answer it. And you might not even be able to answer it. But one of the things I'm trying to establish, and I think it might help these next questions make more sense, is what the difference between, a 1 year producer or music maker versus a 20-year person. Like, is it just getting to know the sounds, right? Like, because in my head I have it broken down like maybe it's obviously learning your sound, learning how it all works and getting better at the actual physical things of it. But then is there a function of over that 20 years, are you now accumulating this huge Rolodex of all these different noises and these weird things that you found just messing around this one song that never ever made it anywhere, but you learned, 2 or 3 really cool sounds you can make in that. And then you keep those all cataloged and you have those all to pull from? Or is it in always messing around and figuring out what you need to do and how you need to flip things around and compress and move around? Is that just giving you a better feel, right? Maybe I can put this in terms of guitar. No, I can't. I'm going to get even more confused. I was trying to think of it chords versus.
No, I like where you're going. Keep going.
Yeah. So going. Is it just you getting more in tune with the actual noises themselves and what translations need to be done to get it to that certain point? Like, I've almost got it here. I just need this one different thing, which is what I struggle with the most of playing guitar and not knowing how to read music or not actually understanding the theory behind music. Is I can never really figure, unless I have someone to actually show me on YouTube or something, like where to go next. I can never mess about and figure out what that is. Is it just you upping that talent and knowing what to do in the moment to find those songs? Or is it like building a compendium of noises and cool things that are unique to you that you build up? Or is it some sort of mix of both of those two things?
Right. Well, funny. There's so many things in that.
We got a lot of time, baby. We got a lot of time.
Yeah. So I think, like photography, it's the camera, it's the photographer, right?
That's what I'm told.
Yeah, it's, like, I don't know any famous photographers, but like a really famous, like New York photographer, or what's his name? The guy with the thick frames. Fuck, what's his name? Shit. Jeremy Scott? No, that's the Moschino guy. I forget. Anyway, Terry something. I don't know. He's got like doesn't wear suspenders and has a handlebar mustache, of course.
Gotcha.
He only uses like disposable cameras. But he's, massive runway photographer out with fucking Jaden Smith and whatever, right? Versus someone like a wedding photographer will have like 10 grand worth of lenses and like
and a drone.
yeah. Well, nothing wrong with wedding photographers.
No, of course not.
Bags, right? Bags, of course, right? But with, I guess, with music, I've actually like, I think I don't even have that many like samples. I think I might have like 5, 6, 7 gigs of samples. Maybe no, probably like 10 samples. There's some people that have like, like terabytes of samples.
Wow.
But you can have 1,000 kicks, but you only use 3. And I find like for what I do, I usually find there's like 5 or 6 kicks that I usually use. And it's about layering kicks and it's about layering snares. And maybe another thing too is I watched a video of a guy one of the guys that worked with Bauer, the guy that did Harlem Shake. His name's What So Not. He said that instead of using like a snare, just use a different sound as a snare to like for the 1 and the 3 or for the 2 and the 4, because it's still a snare but it sounds different. So but now what I do is like I'll have like sound design sessions where I'll open Serum, my my synth, my sound creation thing, and I will just make sound, and then I'll have like 40 different like they don't sound that on their own. They kind of sound neat, but then when I'm making a song, I will go to that sample bank, my own little color palette that I've made, and then I'll pull from that and I'll combine them, I'll stretch them, I'll cut them together, I'll stretch them, reverse them, throw 40 of one plugin on them and see what it does. One time I've thrown I tried breaking Ableton and I tried throwing a 300 of a plugin on it and just see what it does. You know, like that breaking of the program is kind of like Link Ray. And with Link Ray when he got distortion by stabbing a pencil into his amplifier. It's really with that bass. That's a modern version of that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you're so the difference between like just starting out and then like, a seasoned, it's like now when I'm working with Ableton, I don't think like, I don't really, it's kind of like when I'm working with Ableton, it feels like I'm working with clay. Like I'm massaging like a squishy thing. And I'm kind of like, I start with like a block and I'm kind of scooping stuff out, even though I'm starting with a blank canvas. And oftentimes, and what I do now, like I have like throughout the day, I have like sounds just emanating from my head all the time. Like I kind of have like a permanent like dubstep show in my head. Like these like whack whack whack. I just have sounds playing, and then when I like hear one that I like, I'm like, oh shit. And then oftentimes I'll like go on my phone and then I'll go like whack whack and then I'll like try to like make it, and then I'll try to.
Oh, that's so cool.
Usually, don't let that fool you. I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's garbage, and the stuff I make is bad. And most people will tell you that, like 9 times out of 10, like you're just throwing darts at the wall, like darts, just to see if it works. But then like you land on that one thing and you're like, okay, let's explore this a little more. And then, and then you just like, and then what I do is like, when I have a kind of like drop or whatever, then I kind of map out my song. And then I just figure like, okay, so I just have to duplicate this drop twice, come up with like an intro and a build up, and then duplicate that. And then you got a song. It's right. And the thing too is when you're starting out, you overthink everything. You overthink every little aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned to do is to just like, when I think it sounds cool, move on. Go, like fast. You got to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't think of it as like, oh, I'm gonna like make the next like groundbreaking thing. Because I mean, you're gonna make something tomorrow, so it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
and it's about building that catalog of
Mm-hmm.
sound of your work,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to you got to make 1,000 songs. You got to make 1,000 beats before you like make the one that goes viral or people really recognize or whatever, right?
Which is so similar to so many other aspects of life and so many other endeavors that you chase, all follow that same curriculum. And everybody they only see the overnight success. They see that thing. They don't see the 10 years that went into it of whatever you're building, whether that's, a musical palette, whether that's, stand-up chops, if you're doing stand-up comedy, right? Like there's a million things that look like, oh, they just hit that one day, but you don't see all that went into it. And it's curious to see, because that's what I figured. I figured it was something where regardless, even if you have just an innate talent and an amazing ear, it takes time. Most things that are hard just take a lot of time and just ask time, time in the seat, figuring this thing out. I think podcasting is the exact same way. That's why I'm so gung-ho to get as many people on and do this as much as possible, because I know, the podcasts, they might be good, they might be shit, who knows? But I know that, 300 podcasts from now, if I stay consistent with it, those ones will be remarkably better than the first 100, right? Like, and to know that and to keep that mindset, I think that's probably something that holds a lot of people back from trying it all together, because they think, oh, I'm going to suck at the start, right? Like, and that is part of the process. You need to suck at the start to figure it out, right? Oh, I just feel like, at least with a lot of other things like stand-up comedy and, podcasting, you at least have a little bit of something to get you through. Like if you're doing stand-up, you might get a couple laughs. You might not have a killer set, but you might get a couple laughs that keep you coming back. If you do a podcast, it might not be great, but maybe you had a couple poignant points that you made that were okay, but the rest of it was maybe shit. With music, it's hard to make a song that, I wonder how hard is it to keep going when the stuff you're making, is it easy to get excited about it, even if it's not the greatest thing you've ever heard? But is it something that you get excited over, even if it's not that good, because you made it at the start and maybe you were too deep into music altogether to see this? I'm just curious what that first couple months, like if a kid's just starting out, he's never touched a computer, never touched an instrument, but just has a dream and he wants to get into it. Is that something where like you're still getting a lot out of it? There's still a lot of, maybe I can put this to guitar, like when you're learning guitar, it's frustrating, like you're trying to learn the chords, but that first time you hit that chord progression of those, your G to your D to your A or whatever it is, and you play that easy country song that is, it feels so amazing. And you get that moment and that will carry you through the bleeding fingers and the fucking trying to learn a bar chord and all that other shit that just sucks ass. Is there those high point moments in making music like this that carry you through maybe some of the shittier lower points?
Oh man, bro, all the time. Like all the time, dude. Like most times when I sit down to make music, it's bad. Most of the time it's like I look at what I'm doing and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? This sucks. But like, it's not that it sucks, but it's like, it's just like not what I hear in my head say. The biggest part of making music on a computer is kind of getting what's in your head onto the computer.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what defines human creativity is you have to think about it, and then you're not a god. So you have to act and you have to do the work of translating what's in your head, which is just electrical impulses. It's so abstract. And then you have to make it, and not just, you have to like make a sculpture out of clay or metal, but you have to know how to fucking use a computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's like 4 or 5 layers of like abstraction in there. And I think one thing that like, can, I guess, separate, I think I'm getting there. It's only in the past, like few, like literally a year or two where I'm like, okay, like I know how to make stuff sound like me. Is just your approach and just your like kind of the same way how like you can tell like a Van Gogh from a Caravaggio or something just because of their brush strokes or whatever, or like a Picasso, like you can tell Picasso because of the brush strokes. You can usually tell, brush strokes are akin to say like the way someone uses distortion or a certain kind of lead or time stretches something in
It's got some sort of fingerprint on it.
production.
Yeah,
exactly. And that only, it's just time. It's literally just time.
Yeah.
And it's like you bashing your head against a wall over and over and over and over again, making, you know, I've tried to like do you know, kind of like a workout routine where I do just at least an hour a day, at least an hour, if not more, like minimum hour a day of music. And even when it's like a language, man, like you just have to talk. You just got to do it. You got to do it. And usually with when you're first starting out and in general too, there's days where you're like, I'm not making music today. No fucking way. And you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with being like, you know what? I'm just smoking weed and watching anime today.
Yeah. You need those days.
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. And there's and you'll feel bad. You're like, fuck, but like all these other people are making music, you know, and so they're going to be better than me. Whatever, dude. It's fine. It's whatever. And you do the biggest mistake is to compare yourself to other people. That is death. Comparison
is the enemy of happiness.
Yeah, it's so bad, man.
It's so hard not to, man. Like, fuck. Like, I went into it, like I said, I was listening to like thousands and thousands of hours of podcasts. So I had all these tips and tricks, and like all these people have talked about starting their podcast and what the barriers were. And they all say this, right? Like very obvious things, you know, don't get hung up on the numbers. Don't compare yourself to others. So you're going into I was going into this venture knowing all these pitfalls that you go to, knowing how dangerous they are and how unhelpful to the actual grand scheme of things they are. And you still fall in them because it's just human nature. It's so hard not to compare yourself. It's so hard not to get caught up in the numbers. Like all these very basic pitfalls that are pitfalls for a reason, because they dial into that piece that's really deep down in our evolutionary brain that just pulls us to that point. But it's one thing to know that you shouldn't compare yourself to another person. It's another thing to actually put that in emotion and not do it. Fuck. It's tough, man.
Yeah. And one thing that's helped me is you gotta like, especially if you're in any kind of creative thing, you gotta know who the fuck you are. You gotta know what you stand for. You gotta know who are you? Who the fuck are you? Like what's up? Like why do I care about you? What do you like? Kind of like if you were a car, what would you be? If you were a cloud, what would you be? If you were a piece of furniture, like you gotta just know yourself so well. You gotta know your taste. You gotta know, and that's hard. And that's hard. A lot of people, most people don't know who the fuck they are, man.
Because that's the scariest endeavor. The scariest thing any human being can do is sit with themselves and ask those hard questions. It's the hardest thing anyone can do. And the reason, or not the reason, but the fallout of that is there's so many ventures like podcasting, like music, that anything that is you trying to bring something of yourself out, you need to have that vulnerability and you need to be open to bring every piece of you forward. If you try and hide certain ones and you're not bringing the true thing forward, it's got holes in it and it's janky and it's all this thing, but it's so hard for people. All these people start podcasts and they fail, right? I'm used to doing podcasts because this is my lane to explain things through, but it's so much of the time purely because of inauthenticity, right? Like people can feel that instantly. If you're not being authentic, people feel it, but they're not trying to be inauthentic. They want to be authentic, but they are so unfamiliar with themselves and those true deep down things that even if they wanted to, they can't bring it forward because they don't know who they are. And I'm sure that's the same with music. And I'm sure that's, they talk about this in comedy. And I mean, podcasting is number one and stand-up comedy is number two of like what I frame everything through because I'm obsessed with it. But it's the same thing with comedy of all these people talk about these comics that for the first 10 years of their career, they're doing Cosby or they're doing Rogan or they're doing D'Elia or they're doing one of these comics that they see and they idolize because they don't know who their voice is, right? And I'm same thing with music, right? Getter was doing all these other guys until they find that voice and find that comfortability. But the only way to get to that point where you know yourself that well is to keep throwing yourself into the fire and learn things about yourself, right? Like put that bad music together, put those things in, like have those shitty podcasts. And that's all those pieces chipping away to find at the deepest level who you are so you can bring that out. And that's just, there's no substitute for that but time. You need that time in the seat and whatever your art is, you need that and there's no substitute for it. Nothing at all.
100%, dude, 100%. Dude, I can't say anything but fucking word.
Hey, that means I'm doing a good job. And I mean, hey, that's fine. Cause I got a million more questions, about all of that stuff. Where can I take it?
I'm gonna piss real.
Oh, me too. I was gonna say, because I'm about to piss my pants anyway, so I'll be right back.
Let's go.
My door's busted, so I have to put my meditation pillow against it so it doesn't fly open if the dog pushes on it.
Oh, shit, man! I'll admit something. At the beginning of like 5 minutes in, I kicked my wine over and there, but I wanted to like save face, and I just like kept a straight face and didn't fucking look at it.
Your socks are just full of wine. Oh, it's funny. Fuck, we could have stopped and let her clean up. That would have been a perfect part of the podcast.
You should keep that in too. That's kind of funny.
We keep everything in here, baby. Everything in. Nothing gets cut unless I accidentally show my dick again. But that only happened twice, okay? In 75 episodes, it's only happened twice.
Twice? Wow.
Shit gets wild. And both times are on Fraser's episode, so I'm going to blame him.
Oh, I can't imagine, man. That guy want to take my dick out all the time.
Oh, my God. All right. Well, now I'm trying to think of what questions I was going to ask going back into that. There was the individuality of finding the sounds themselves.
Right. Well, if I can just like put a bookend to that.
Of course you can.
Yeah, like you gotta, and I think if you gotta, I think you have to spend a lot of, like I could say, like with music, you have to spend a lot of time with yourself and your values, and you got to figure out, just what you stand for and why. Well, not necessarily why, because you have to give a reason, but you gotta just like kind of take the time and like there's that fucking crazy fucking Matthew McConaughey little video that he put on Instagram where he's like, you got to check in with the M and the E, that shit. And you got to be fucking crazy with yourself, and not for everybody. Acid helps. That's all I'm going to say. Some people it's taking a walk in the woods. Sometimes it's eating healthy. Sometimes it's working out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's adopting a whatever. But it's a lot of it also is being comfortable with who you are, and that's, I think, probably the hardest thing to do as a human. I think. And
people will find a million things to avoid doing that and becoming comfortable with who they are, or not even becoming. I think almost to take it even a step back is becoming comfortable with you are is the second step to finding out who you are and then becoming comfortable with it. But people don't even want to do that first step of even asking those questions about who you are, right? Like that is the scariest thing. And people will have the most elaborate lifestyles and viewpoints to prevent themselves from having to ask those questions. It's actually amazing when you look at it through that lens, how far people will go not to have to ask those questions. Hey.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Like I did it. But maybe like, I mean, I like to tell people like, I did, I wasted 3 years doing a BFA, a bachelor fuck all, as my dad likes to call it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
No, I really, I had to go through those 3 years at Carleton, not really doing anything, but I did do a lot of stuff. Like in Ottawa, I had a band. I had like a synthwave band.
Yeah.
Called Jaguar Saint, and it was me on synths and like drum programming, and another guy singing and playing guitar, and I would project vocal or visuals behind us that was like a collage of like be a collage of like fucking Blade Runner anime and like fucking Jean-Luc Godard and like flashing between. And actually one, if I could tell a little story, I mean, of course. From that time. That was like, so Jaguar in Ottawa, Jaguar Saint was like my first band, like real band. And we played all around Ottawa. It was really, really cool, really fun, really, really sweet. We only practiced, like every time we practiced, we'd have one of those fucking little bottles of Absolute and we'd be totally fucking trashed.
That's the way to do it. Is there any other way, really?
Yeah, no, not really. And I can confidently say, I hope no one's listening from the GNWT working at the student financial assistance, but all like that $800 that I would get every month from the GNWT mostly went to booze.
There you go. I'm sure they're well aware of that.
I think they're well aware. Yeah. But one of my coolest like music moments was we we were like, kind of like fucking a mix of like fucking like synthwave shit, like Talking Heads with like New Order, with like that kind of like old like 80s synthwave, new wave kind of shit. And we did a cover. One of our last show, it was our last show in Ottawa, and we did a cover of "Take My Breath Away," that song in Top Gun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we did and it was in this like dingy fucking like flop house basement, and there was like fucking 80 people there. It was packed. Everybody's fucked up, and we fucking went into that fucking song, and everybody started singing along. Everybody was singing along, and they were louder than us. And that was like I was doing like I had like the Geddy Lee thing going. I was like doing like 2 keyboards at once, and there was a moment like when me and my bandmate like looked at each other like,
holy fuck, can you believe this?
Yeah, like this is fucking sick. Yeah. So cool. Yeah, that was a really cool moment. And it's those moments in music that you have to hold on to and that keep you going and like gets you that like really get you through the hard times and what you don't usually see is just like practicing scales over and over and over again, practicing those chord progressions, practicing sound design, practicing
sitting in Serum, making all those noises.
Exactly. It really makes it all worth it. I have this like little like mashup that I do that always fucking gets the crowd like losing their mind.
Gets the people going.
Yeah, it's a mashup. You can, I think there's a post of it on my Instagram. Okay. It's a Stacy's mom. It's Stacy's mom that goes into like a Jaws, like that huge fucking Jaws track.
Yeah.
And because I'll usually play it like, I'll play it like I'll start the Stacy's mom like junk 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 riff like right when you think it's like a drop is about to start.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could talk about fucking like DJ like sets and like EDM.
Yeah, that I have 2 ways I want to take on, and one of them is that way. So I'm all for it.
One way is to like like build up expectation for like a crazy drop is going to happen, and then like the fucking
throw a switch, throw a fucking curveball at him.
Yeah, and the people are like, "Oh shit!" And then they start singing along to like Stacy's mom and shit. And it's fucking so cool. And then there's kind of like this like EDM shit in the background. And then when it's goes into like the kind of like chorus and Stacy's mom, this like big old fucking like bass house track hits, and then people lose their mind because they're like, "Okay, we're back in it. Okay, we're back." But yeah, it's those little moments that like just make it so worth it. Because like I think the reason, like, I didn't really like, or not that I didn't like, but I didn't really pay attention to stand up for a long time until like maybe like 2 years ago. And I like my purpose, or like not purpose, but like the reason why like I love to make music is like just only to like make people happy. Cause like I love to be happy and I want to make people happy. That's it. That's end of story. And it's those like little moments of like, people go home and they'll talk about like, oh man, fucking this happened. That's it. That's all I got to do. I can die tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And earlier you were talking about a lot of the things, and you'd kind of mentioned, like how and all this stuff. You said like why, and you're saying, I don't know if why is that important. I always wanted to stop you right there and say, to me, I think why is everything. I think that is what everything grows out from. That's the pot. That's the base. That's the roots, right? Like everything grows from your why. Why do you do this, right? Like why, what makes you play music? What makes you podcast? What makes you do that? Like if you don't know that, and you're just, because I think the other opportunity, if you don't ask that question, right? And talking about people not wanting to ask those tough questions of themselves, I think that's the biggest one. That's the apex of all the questions. Why are you doing this? Why do you do that job? Are you doing that job because you love it? Or are you doing it because people told you this is the way to do it? Right? Like myself, I run a company that, why I ended up doing it, if I answer that honestly, it's because I was following what everybody told me I wanted to do. You need to make lots of money. You need to do this. You need to have the status. You need to have the truck. You need to have, right? Like oil field, exactly what growing up in Slave Lake, the path of success, what success is, or what success was shown to me to be. I went for that, right? Like, and I accomplished it quite quickly and realizing, this isn't all that great. Like I'm not happy. This isn't what I want to choose. And then I had to do some real, and it was not fun. It was some dark times. There's some really low points of asking myself these questions of why, what do you want to do? And it comes back to the thing of like, I want to spread information. I want to show cool things. I want to be able to give recommendations and people to take them and to trust me because they've built something with me. And that changed so much of just knowing that why and that bringing that forward. So to hear you say so confidently where that why is, I would say that is 90% of the battle. Once you have that, the rest is just not giving up. It's 90% knowing your why and sticking to it and holding your values and not letting all the pomp and circumstance and the business side and the kind of grimier, shittier part of it beat that out of you, of that why, and holding on to that. And then the next 10% is just not giving up and just showing up every day and making sure you get that hour a day and all that stuff. And that's with anything, right? And I think people can apply that to whatever it is they want to chase. But that starting part about asking why and having a real honest conversation with yourself to get there. And you already mentioned it, but I think one of the biggest cheat codes to that is drugs, right? You showed acid, weed, all these things. It breaks down those questions and makes it more okay to ask those questions of yourself, and it'll bubble up from you, right? And I feel like that's part of it. Drugs are so stigmatized with all the stuff that you don't get to see the positive aspects of it. But you see that there's all these cliches of, the typical stoner and what that is. And 90% of those cliches are just somebody that has asked those questions of themselves and answered them and is now happy with those answers and can walk through life a happier person, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
It's
Hey, man, I actually had a little moment in my university dorm, actually my first year. So like the why thing, I don't think, and the why doesn't have to be complex at all. Yeah. Like the more simple the why thing is, like,
it usually is. Yeah.
The easier, or not easy, but the more comfortable you are with why you're doing, right? Yeah. And I had a little moment in my dorm room in Ottawa and Carleton, and I was like reading about like some architect building a church in France in like 1610 or some fucking dumb shit.
Yeah.
And thick book. This book cost me like fucking $300. Goddamn. Yeah. And I'm like, fucking fuck. And I'm reading it and I'm like, it was weird. I had this like thought and I'm like, I'm going to die. One day I'm going to die. So why aren't I doing everything that I can to organize my reality to be the way I want to be now? Mm-hmm. And so at that moment, it was like, I wanted to go to art school at that moment, mm-hmm. To like all I wanted to do really at that moment in Ottawa is I wanted to like, make, big sculptures, big, huge, like 2001 Odyssey sculptures out of like concrete and glass mm-hmm. and stuff like that. But I'm like, I got to get out of this, man. I have to it's kind of funny. Like death is a good motivator.
It's the ultimate motivator.
Without thinking, because mm-hmm. I always think like when I'm doing shit, because there are days when I'm like, I'm making something and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Should I even do this? Like, this is fucking dumb. And then I'm like, no, because I'm picturing myself and I have a contract with myself way in the future. Mm. I've written a little, there's a check and balance of, don't you do anything that you like do shit. What am I trying to say? Like, because I picture myself on my deathbed just about to expire and I don't want there to be anything that I regret not doing, even though it's so cliche and it's so, I guess, like our time of like, like follow your dreams, but it's not even about following your dreams. Cause like I had dreams, of being an architect, of being an artist, being an, like a installation artist and being like, doing like landscape art and stuff like that. But
maybe I can throw something at you that might clarify. I think what you're trying to clarify, it's less about the dreams and it's more about the underlying value system that is innate to you, that you were from like a little kid, and that is what's going to bring you to those dreams, right? That innate value system of what you believe in and what motivates you is very innate, and you're built in, and that will draw you to things. Like it drew me to podcasting, it drew you to music, and it's about finding out what that is underneath, because that might change you. You pursuing music might bring you to something in the future that isn't even invented yet, that is your absolute passion and lines up with those values. It's about asking those questions that are deeper than your dreams, right? What is motivating me to pursue these types of dreams, and then holding on to that, like very much of the Howard Rourke, I'm coming back to it because I've been obsessed with it for months, but like it's that concept of the deep innate values that you almost, or it's almost ineffable. You almost can't even articulate what it is, right? You can articulate what a dream is. I want to be a musician. I want to do these. But what motivates it at a deeper level is it's almost ephemeral. Right? You can't even explain what it is, but you know it. And that's something that I feel super deeply. And I struggle all the time because what my job is supposed to be with this podcast is to be able to articulate anything I'm saying. And earlier when you were talking about having something in your head and wanting to get it out in music and that struggle, it mirrors so much of what I've struggled with. Is I sit all the time and I'm podcasting in my head all the time. And if I'm not working or I'm not doing something, I'm having conversations in my head. I always have been since I was a kid, right? And arguments and these debates. And I know exactly what I want to say on a topic. Like I'm just trying to pick something not controversial, like, I don't know. Anyway, but I'll have this whole conversation in my head of exactly with beautiful language and metaphors of how I want to bring it. And then I get on the podcast and whatever it is in that moment, you can and you know exactly what you want to get out. But that's what takes that 10 years of skills is you're honing your tools to be able to take what's in your head and put it out onto the canvas, right? This is my canvas, right? You know, the Ableton program might be your canvas, whatever that is. And whatever that life is about training yourself to let through that, whatever you want to take that level that's below the dreams, that inarticulate thing and bring it through whatever medium you are. I don't know. I might have gone way too much. I might have slipped back into an acid trip there a little bit on that one. But
I love this, man. No, this is I'm picking up what you're putting down, man. This is like exactly what I'd love to think about.
Yeah.
And one thing though, is that what you have to kind of realize is, and what I've kind of like drawn myself to is work. Like work. You got to work fucking hard. And you got to work so fucking hard that you should be tired at the end of the day. You should be exhausted. Like you should be like falling asleep at your computer or your paintbrush or your microphone or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you gotta like become, I used to be like, because, I used to be kind of like, I guess like atheist or whatever as like up to like 20, 21 or 22. And
who isn't?
Yeah, of course. But then I kind of started to discover, like, I'm not a God-fearing man by any means, but like humans are so innately like religious or spiritual. Like we need to like reach for something that isn't there, right? Of course you have to, otherwise like
it's evolutionary.
Yeah. If you like, there's that dumb fucking like whatever, like I don't really care that much about like the Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, like those are kind of like old hat to me, but they have those like, oh, if we burned all the science books, we would like discover gravity again. Like, yeah, sure, fucking wow, whatever. But if you burned like all religion, the next day someone would already have another like deity, God, like organizational thing to bring people together and be like, hey, let's form a community and we're doing this because of this. And then, like, okay, sure. Then like science and math and you need it, right? Comes after, right? But you need that abstraction, that art. Like, I feel like art, I'm kind of biased, but like art comes first. Like, you need the abs, because like, why should I hang out with you? Why should we have a family? Why should we get together and make a house where we can all come together and eat together, interact and make sounds and like share information? Why? Like, there's no math. There's no there's a because 2 + 2 = 4 and that's why. No, it's like there's a kind of like empty point that all these arrows are pointing to. So I guess, and I guess that's might be why like people kind of can have like a spiritual experience at like a music show, right? With or without drugs, like,
yeah.
But I've only really ever been to like one. I don't really like EDM shows that much, just because I would usually rather be up there playing 100%. The music audience. Like I've seen any like any kind of music, you sober or on drugs, there's a kind of communal aspect to that. You can't like, I guess you can like science it out and like, okay, there's releasing in the brain because of this information, but like there's always still the sum, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think you've unintentionally walked right into my favorite domain, because I love talking about this stuff. And this is everything, right? And what I've learned in the research I've done is so much of why that feeling is of that why everybody has that, and exactly what you said. If we burned all the religious books tomorrow, somebody would be in there. And what it comes to, it's evolutionary, because you go back thousands and thousands of years before Jesus, before all that stuff, right, to the very first religions. It is art, right? When you say art comes first, it is, because when what people don't understand about religion, and this is, I'm guessing at this point, and I'm parroting other people, right? This is very Jordan Peterson. What religion was at the very start was people, right? We were in oil. We didn't know how to write. We know how to tell stories. We know how to create art with our mouths. That was what our first relation of art was. And what we started to do is tell stories. But what are you going to tell stories about? What you see around you. You're telling stories about you're telling the human story. You're telling the story of humanity, of human nature, and all these different, that's why they're so similar. That's why a religion that pops up in, Canada, right, with the native tribes of Canada versus somewhere in the Orient somewhere, and just it seems uncanny, this, right? It almost seems mystical how similar some of these things are. But what it is they're telling stories about the people and the ideals that they see, and trying to create a map and pass on knowledge with this religion. And then it gets, over years and thousands of years, it gets twisted into something else, and there's power structures that come in. But at the very base of what it is, and then from that time, we've always evolved with that, right? With these stories and these things, and that we put, so that there's this place inside of us that has this religion, right? And when you understand where that came from, it loses a bit of the woo-woo, and it becomes more natural. Oh, that makes sense of why that's there. Then it got compromised over the years, and we got to see, and it got to a point of critical mass, I don't know, maybe 50 years ago, where all the pain and horror and suffering that, that thing inside of us, that religion thing that we needed and that helped us get to this point, had used up its usefulness, and we're just seeing the dark side of it. So we just say, let's cut it all together. This is this is bullshit. We don't need this. We've moved past this. So we rip that out. Everyone rips this out of this. Now we have this giant hole, and everyone just fills out. Maybe that's social media. Maybe that's whatever. So now religion becomes whatever you want it to be, right? Because it's innate to us of what we need to have. You need to have that filled with something. You're going to fill it somewhere. But for those people that don't understand that, you're now walking around vulnerable, because you have a giant hole in your chest that you don't realize is there, that is just a magnet for whatever it is that you can attract, whether it's positive or negative. You're not doing any sort of checks and balances. Something's just sticking in there. And sometimes you'll move from thing to thing. Me and you probably both know those people where that thing inside your chest is one thing one week, next one the next, right? And these people that just have no solidity, no essence of who they are. They're just trying on all these hats and putting all these things in there to try and fill that, right? So it makes sense. And I feel like that's that natural progression of people understanding and getting that. Because I had the same thing. I was very atheistic in my later teen years, and it was so just I just shut that whole lane off, and I wouldn't even, anybody that talked in those terms, I don't even need to listen to this idea. And then you come around on it, you get more knowledge, and you understand more of it, and it rushes back in. You find your own terms of it, right? Like, same thing. I'm not God-fearing by any means, but I am more spiritual, and I understand a lot of that and some of the positive sides of that, right? Like, it's so interesting, and it goes back to that why of whatever that is, right? You can figure that out for yourself and ask that why and try and determine it, or you can just walk through life having that why be a mystery to you, and have just things pop in there and fill that void for a week or 2 weeks or 2 months. And I don't know, it can go down some really dangerous paths.
It can. It really can. And I think maybe like, that's fucking, I love what you said there about like early people's, like,
just telling stories,
interpretation of reality, and then like them telling stories, and then like we look kind of back on that, and our kind of like distance that we have to look back on these people, then we're like, oh well, that's similar to that, that's similar to that, that's similar to that, and on that's kind of just like two things to that. It's like, well, one, it's very there's such a huge distance between that, where like there's a lot of minutia between those things that looks like it. Yeah, they drew like the same circle with the triangle or some shit. We're like, oh, they aliens, right? Fucking shit like that, right? Or like, and then there's the other thing where like, of course, and these people were like up like 300,000 years ago until now. It's the same brain. It's the same brain as like, same brain of reasoning but we just didn't have the, I guess, logical information given to us about like, the earth is a globe and stars or whatever, right? And so you had the same like very creative, very innovative deductive reasoning of like why the sun goes around, or why it gets dark at night, or why you plant a seed and it grows in the summer, and then you get stories, because that's all we were able to do is to pass on stories, right? And I guess that's really like
that's where all our information passed on for thousands and thousands of years was only orally in stories, passing it on, right? There was no other way. You couldn't go on, you couldn't hop on a Wikipedia and look shit up. Fuck.
Not really. And I guess that's where kind of like that's what like art all we fucking care about, I think, is stories. Like we just like, what do we still do? We still get together, a bunch of buds, pass around rotten wheat and tell stories. That's all we want to do. We want to go, hey man, what's up with you? All right, what's up with me? Let's talk about the similarities. We go to bed, we keep doing what we're doing. Like that's all we want to do. We just want to share a story. And that essentially, like, I really like to think about like the story, like the concept, like the abstract concept of the story is like the ultimate like art. That's like art 0.1 almost,
I totally get what you're saying.
Of just like a recounting, because and of sharing information. And because that's really like what I just said, like a bunch of friends around the fire, eating, like, and for sure, like, I mean, I find those like ancient alien, I watch those like ancient alien shows, like, because it's funny and it's hilarious. It's really cool. Like, it's just hilarious watching those things, but it's very like belittling, I find, to just humans in general, to say that like, oh, they didn't have the technology and they didn't have the know-how, and like, well, we had the same brain and we were actually pretty smart and we were pretty, like pretty innovative. And just because like it's kind of like us looking back on like old scriptures or old carvings or old like hieroglyphics about like some telling of like some God interacting with humans or some kind of whatever, and us thinking that was real to them. That's like archaeologists like 1,000 years in the future looking at like a Spider-Man comic and thinking Spider-Man was like a god to us. Or it's like no, like they were creative too. They have like comics and stories, and they were jokey. They were probably fun. They're probably funnier than us.
Yeah, they very well could be, right? Because at that point, we be funny because it's an added benefit because we're very safe and all this stuff. But if your job was to be funny back then and that was all you, and that was your survival, you're probably pretty fucking funny, right? Like, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because we've learned this lesson so many times over the years. Like, we thought the world was flat, and then we found that out, right? But we were so sure the day before that it was flat, right? And then we thought, the earth is the center of the cosmos, and then we found that out, but we were so sure before. And then 20 years ago we were so sure that like the modern human of like agriculture and starting to write shit down was, I can't remember what, like 9,000, I'm just throwing numbers out here, like 9,000 years ago. And just a couple of years ago we're starting to see, oh man, actually humans have been evolving and the highs and lows, and we've created these huge peaks of human progress, and then got wiped out by whatever, a volcano or a solar flare or something, and built all the way back up. And now we're finding these remnants of these amazing cultures that are thousands and thousands of years older than we ever thought humans were even human, right? Like our idea of when we started to figure it out is so wrong. And just recently finding out we're wrong. And what gets me is we've learned all those lessons all this time. And what we should, by now, you think we get to this point where we just go, we don't know shit. We're guessing as best we can. And we're not going to be really dogmatic to this information, because we've shown we're not very good at this. And yet and I think this is human nature, and it's innate to us of we have egos, and that's what's allowed us to get to this point, but they also are the biggest thing holding us back, right? Like, our ego prevents us from keeping these ideas open and malleable. And you see this happening all over, where we get so sure, like, this disease was natural. COVID came from a market. There's no other way. And we completely close ourselves off from it. And then all this information comes out. I was like, oh, well, it's kind of looking this other way, but we kind of spent a year completely pretending that there's no way in ever that could even be a possibility. And then we get to this point where like, oh shit, like maybe that was not the smartest way to go about this, right? Like, but you see it happen over and over again.
Of course. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Piss break number 2.
Yeah, let's get her. Let's get her. Old Dennis Rodman scared the shit out of me when I came back in. I was like, what the fuck? And I realized it's just your background.
And well, I mean, Dennis Rodman is one of my favorite people because I guess what we just talked about for the past half hour, where he just, and Andre Agassi a little bit is pretty close second, because those are two types of people who, you know, entered into a sport, I mean, with a lot of talent and a lot of hard work, and said, you know what, fuck you, I am who I am, and you can all suck a fucking dick.
Yeah.
You know, and Dennis Rodman did that a little more than Andre Agassi. But I mean, Andre Agassi is still one of my like favorite people, but Dennis Rodman like did that in spades, and he did it in such a way where he redefined sports as a whole. I mean, like Michael Jordan did it on like one end of prowess, but then Dennis Rodman did it on the other end in terms of just like pure fucking zaniness. He was like the Carrot Top kind of of sports, really, you know.
And what makes Dennis Rodman so much different than so many other guys is not only was it just sports, like he was like for like Black culture, for masculinity in general, he was bending so many, at the time that he was doing it, he was breaking so many molds. He wasn't just, you know, there's definitely that sports box that he was kicking holes in left, right, and center, but he was kicking holes through so many fucking boxes and all this shit, like labels, tearing those cocksuckers off all over, you know, going to Vegas for, you know, in the middle of a run for a fucking, you know, R&R session. Like, like I don't think we'll ever see another Dennis Rodman. Like, you don't want to say that, because, you know, that's kind of a sad thing to say, but like it's almost beautiful and sad at the same time, because society has come so far from the days of Dennis Rodman that there almost can never be a Dennis Rodman, because it would never have the same impact, because we are so much more liberalized and we've come so far in so many domains. But then, you know, which is beautiful and that's great, but it's also sad because, you know, the uniqueness that we saw with Dennis Rodman, that was a special time, and it's still, even to look back on it, it's special, right? And to not, and maybe in saying that, I'm kind of second guessing myself already, because I think regardless how far society comes, there's always going to be boxes to bust through, and you just got to get, you know, Dennis Rodman at that time was pretty normal compared to what you'd have to be in this day and age to have the same effect that he had, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah, I guess, Dennis Rodman, I don't know, man, even if Dennis, well, very interesting though, because I guess I'm not too sure. I don't really follow the NBA so much now, but
yeah, me neither.
But I think a one close second to Dennis Rodman might be like Draymond Green, where like Draymond Green's pretty mouthy, he's pretty funny, and another analog I can think of in NHL is on fucking Vegas there, Reeves. Because he's pretty beaky and he's hilarious. He's always joking around with the reporters and stuff, and Beacon, and like he really interjects his personality. But I don't think you can. It's weird. What a dichotomy, right? It's like you could only have had Dennis in that time where it was very strict, and even now where it's like very open. It's almost like if Dennis were to exist now, people would just be like, "Hey, man, stop." You know, they would just tell him to stop, because maybe there's so much but there's not really that much in sports, though. You know, like I'm not that sure, but maybe like no one just has the balls to do that anymore, because like Dennis probably had some of the biggest balls in fucking
right. And to back that up, like he could be who he was because this is the sentence that almost just came out of my mouth wouldn't need me to get slapped. I almost just said he was who he was because of who he was. Right? Like that makes no sense, but I want to try and articulate what I was trying to say, right? Like he was able to be that person where he could wear a dress, you know, like have his ears pierced, all this stuff, you know, because he was that real motherfucker. You didn't want to fuck with Dennis Rodman either, right? Like the way he played on the court was an extension of who he was and what he went through and what he had seen in his life to get him to that point, right? Like, so he could do whatever the fuck he want. He could wear, you know, 19 dresses, fucking put lipstick on. Nobody's going to say shit to Dennis fucking Rodman, because he will rip your face off your skull, right? Which is another important piece to remember when you look back on it fondly, because I think now Dennis Rodman has so much personality and we love him so much. I feel like he's almost a cultural icon where everyone looks at him. But back in that day when he was in the prime of that the way he played and what he brought to that court, I don't think people were saying too much shit. There's a reason he, of all people, could go off to Vegas for a couple of days in the middle of the season, right? Like, not a lot of guys could get away with that, but he was who he was, and that's what allowed him to be that.
Yeah, but I think also, he played on one of the best teams ever in the NBA during that time.
Yeah.
And also, but he just was one of the best defensemen.
Exactly. And but then when
some of the best rebounds ever, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking, not only that, like, he was on a great team, but I think that team was great. There was a way that team was great, but there was a way that they were great that was only possible with Dennis Rodman because of the bad boys. Where were they? The Detroit Pistons in that age were so mad. And when they met the Bulls, I think it was without Dennis Rodman. I think they played them against them and they just beat them up, right? They had the Jordan rules and they won that championship because they couldn't get past them, right? You don't add Dennis Rodman to that mix and that meanness, that greenness, that nobody wants to fuck with him, right? To fight back against the type of game they were playing against them. I don't think they ever get over that first hump, or maybe it would take them longer to get over that hump. Maybe it wouldn't, but I think that Bulls team needed a Dennis Rodman to be able to compete in what the league was at that time, right?
100%. Yeah. Both in attitude and skill.
100%. Yeah. Like, you can't, I feel like all this almost sounds like we're knocking his skills down a peg just because of everything else he brought, but it's not. He had elite skills as a defender, and then also had all the antics and all the meanness and all the pizzazz that he brought to that team. And also just the fit. Like, I could talk years on this just because of how amazing, when you just look at sports in general and the chemistry and what it all takes to make a team and to have what that had, because Dennis Rodman was a player that didn't fit into many systems. And then he got there. He needed a Michael Jordan to be able to play under, to be able to reach his potential, right? Like, just what an amazing fucking mix of special ingredients that was to create what we got to see in sports, or not even we, because I mean, me and you weren't seeing that at that time. We're going back and looking at it, right? Like, it's fascinating, man.
Yeah, that Bulls documentary that came out on Netflix like a year ago.
Last Dance.
I was a little disappointed because they had one episode on Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know it's about Jordan and Pippen a little bit, but like, I would have loved to see, Jordan maybe even talk more shit about Dennis Rodman, because man, Dennis Rodman was probably really hard to deal with as like a Pippen or Jordan. Probably very difficult. But again, it's like, it's that, like, just like, pimple on the Cindy Crawford, that like makes it beautiful, it's that one little grain of sand in the machine that kind of makes it work.
It's the low parts of the song that make the loud stuff sound loud.
That's it, baby.
Let's go.
Let's go, dude.
Nailed it. I saw it.
And man, what? Oh, okay. So I guess we could talk about hockey maybe for a little bit.
All day, baby.
So very interesting to watch last night's game between Montreal and Vegas. This is probably going to come out maybe after
probably a couple weeks from now. It'll probably be on the final at that point, I would imagine, by the time this comes out.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see, but you could tell. So the first game, Montreal and Vegas, you could really tell that. I mean, they had so many days off, and you could tell that, like, and you already know, like, Montreal. I don't even know that much about hockey, to be honest, but Montreal is technically not
on paper, they're a weaker team.
He's the weaker team in the semifinals and all the semifinals. Evident. And also evident in the first game. The Vegas is they're just huge also, right? They're just way taller, way more aggressive. But I feel like Montreal is like, they're like, if they're almost like, if there's like people that watch like Naruto or anime, they're kind of like the Naruto of hockey, where they're like, they're not the best, they're not the greatest, not the strongest, but they know how to adapt and they know how to play like themselves.
They have an identity.
Exactly. And they figured out Vegas. in a night. And that's, I think, the strong suit. Like Vegas is technically like a better team, but I feel like Montreal was able to pick them apart, and they really did their homework, and they really played like Montreal. We've seen them play.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but
it's kind of that dance of they get their shot to, you know, figure them out and put their lockdown D and their plans in place, especially when you have a D core like Montreal has that's so huge and so dominant, so hard to play against, and a goalie like Carey Price. That is a tough mix for everyone. Even if you're, you know, like their forward depth in the entire league, like they don't probably crack the top 50% of the NHL, not even just like playoff teams or anything, right? And there's a lot of things that go into hockey, but in terms of forward and scoring depth, not even close. But with what they have, right, and knowing that that's their identity and that's what they can do, and they have Carey Price and they have, you know, Petrie and Edmondson and Romanov and all these D-men that are very talented, they can
like insane.
Exactly, right. But they know that's their only chance to beat a team like Vegas, because you match up, you know, you have Carey Price, but they got Fleury and Leonard. So it's like, you have the, you know, probably the number one guy everyone would want in their crease, but they have maybe like, I don't know, the 2 or 3 guy you'd want in their crease. So it kind of, you know, goes off. And then Montreal has this amazing decor, but Vegas has Pietrangelo and Theodore and all these guys, like, right. Like you see all these matching up that it could go either way. And then it comes down, which is what is so exciting to me about the playoffs, and anybody can win, is that you can take your identity and you can outkick your coverage with identity in the NHL, maybe more so than any other sport. Right. And you see it happening on both sides of the bracket, because the Islanders, a little bit different. I think maybe the Islanders are just underrated more so than where Montreal is underrated, but for good, not underrated, because they're accurately rated, right? They are the underdogs in that matchup. Whereas New York Islanders, very similar, right? Like on paper, they look like a lesser team, but I would even say even more so than Montreal. They are so well coached and so work as a team, and are just one. When they go out as a 5-man unit, it looks like they're all, you know, telepathy together, because they play in a certain way that's been so ingrained to them that can overtake that gap in skill, right? And it's it's fascinating. I wonder, here's a weird way to spin this back into music, but I'm curious, in that way that in sports you can find those things like identity that can bridge that gap in skill, is there anything that you see that parallels in music where there's something, whatever it is, some certain pizzazz that will bridge a gap of maybe skill or lack of experience that would get you there? Like, is that maybe the personality? Is that the outside of the music stuff, or is there nothing? Is it just one of those things where you got to have it, and if you don't have the time in, you're not going to get there?
No, man, I think music is almost speaks more to personality than, because you can look at a lot of people that are really successful. And like we were talking about earlier, like it's not the greatest, but it fits the culture, that perfect moment. And it fits, like, you know, like, again, I guess music, I guess it's a little more art than hockey, even though I would consider hockey a big art.
Yeah.
But oh, interesting. How do I answer that question? Yeah, a little bit of a balance, but I would say, if I can just put numbers to it, it's probably like 70, 65. It's probably like 65. I don't know, 65 personality. No, 70 personality, 30 skill. Because man, like if you just understand a few basics of music production and you insert your personality into that, I can't say how to do that, because I don't know how to like tell you how to do that. Like,
yeah, you have to figure that out yourself.
Tweak a compressor a certain way, or make, you know, blow out a certain synth a certain way, or whatever. But for sure, it's your attitude. And we were going back to it earlier, like, if people, when you're performing, or when you're, you know, doing a breakdown of a song, or when you're promoting a song that you just did, or working with someone, people can smell inauthenticity a mile away.
100%. It's the best thing humans are good at.
Yeah, and then they're totally uninvested. But if you're like, fucking check out my song, it's fucking sick, and you're playing your song live, and you're fucking just like going in on it, and you're so stoked about it, and all your friends are stoked about it, that's all we're here for. We're all just here to fucking enjoy what you're enjoying. And, you know, we all have mirror neurons. You know, if you're smart, if I start laughing, you're going to laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Like if I'm having a good time, you're having a good time.
Exactly.
Like, that's all we're kind of here for. So, I mean, yeah, interesting. Okay, so so in like Montreal sense, how is it kind of similar to music? Yeah, it's all about being you, because Montreal's so good at being Montreal. They're so good at it's crunch time, right? It's so good at being in the moment and really figuring it out on the spot and really playing their opponent. Montreal really knows how to play their opponent. And I guess, you know, one example of that is being like a good DJ is knowing your crowd, like knowing, you know, if your crowd isn't fucking, if all they're gonna like dance to is like samba, then you should probably play samba, because it's music isn't about you. It's not. It's about the people you're playing it for.
Right.
As much as you want to think like, you know, like people are here to see me, you know, as a DJ, you have to be a what's an animal that improvises or scavenges, like a
raven.
Or raven, exactly, raven. You gotta be.
I'm on fire today, baby.
Fuck yeah, dude. You gotta be in the moment, and you gotta be on your toes, and because like you gotta get down to it. Like, why do people go see you play? Because they want to have fun. They paid you fucking money, man.
Yeah.
They paid you a 2 hours worth wage at their job that they could have spent on food, rent.
Movies, a million things. With the internet these days, fucking anything, literally.
Anything. Yeah. And they chose to spend it on you. So it's your job. It's my job to make sure they're happy. And that's, I mean, I love that, man. That's so cool to me that I can be in charge of someone's happiness. Like, that's the best job. That's the best job in the world. Sign me up. I'm there. You know?
Exactly. And
cool. That's so cool.
And that's something that is very innate to me, because not to bring this back to podcasting again, but in getting into podcasting, so much of the podcasts I listen to were stand-up comedians, and I love stand-up. And you hear them mentioning the exact same thing of that. Of every crowd is different. You got to play to that crowd, and you might have an idea in your head of, you know, I have these bits and I want to work on this new thing, but it doesn't. You have to, if you try and just stick with what you want to do and the crowd isn't on board, you're going to have a rough night and you're probably going to bomb, right? You have to be. It's a conversation, right? Like it's a two-way thing. Like comedians oftentimes put it in the terms of playing an instrument. The crowd is the instrument. They're the artist, but you have to play that instrument. You have to play differently, right? You know, it's like a different guitar walks in that room every time. You have to play it a little bit differently and find what you're going to get best out of that crowd. And it sounds like it's a similar thing when you're DJing. And this is something that I was hoping to get to, because in my relation to EDM and the scene and everything, like I said, all my friends, literally almost to a T, like our entire university, like Lister Hall, where we're at, like with FO and stuff, it seemed like everybody raved, everybody but me. And I would, you know, and I loved them. And this was the thing, I loved the music and I loved everything that it stands for and love. And I'm hippie to the core, right? Like in my heart, but I was so anti drugs, anti that thing at that time. And I've come a long way from that, and I've opened up and I've chilled out a lot since then, but it just stopped me. It was that first barrier that stopped me from getting into it. So I kind of got it from the outside, and I never even understood until actually a couple months ago when I had somebody on that knew the difference between producing and DJing. I didn't even know the difference, right? Like I was calling it the same thing. And I probably, you know, 20 friends that are DJs from that crew, because they all kind of got decks and figured this stuff out. And I think that was where some of my misconceptions about Ableton and what that came with, because I think what I was looking at everything through the lens of is DJing, and you're producing, right? Which is two very different things that I'm just coming to understand, right? So I got to see it through the lens of what it was to DJ, and it was so much more about like knowing all these songs and knowing which ones mixed together and all this kind of stuff. And then what I thought was really cool, and maybe I'll just tell a little story before I get back into questions, was I probably, like I said, maybe 20 friends that can DJ, probably five to 10 of my really close buddies all can do it good enough that at a house party, they could hop on the decks and get the party rocking, right? And that was pretty cool. And a couple of them got to play some pretty big shows, right? Like one played Scream at the event center in Edmonton, which was huge. And it was so cool to see like one of our buddies doing it and that kind of thing. But then went to this house party, like you said, in a basement somewhere, and they had this janky setup and a bunch of my buddies. And to see my friends, like my really close friends, hop on there and make that connection with the entire party and watch, and then to go behind the booth and just hype them up, like with my buddy playing the shit and you just getting people hot, like that is a feeling like, oh, that is, it is so hard to describe to people. Just that, like that connection of that energy. You're sending energy out with the music, but you're getting it back twice full, right? Like it's sending it back, and it was so cool. And from that moment of being at that party and seeing what it is that they get to do, changed my entire perception of what it was, and started to look at it differently. And then in talking to them about them getting into it was, and this is again more on the DJ side than the producing side, but you probably have some sort of insights on this. They were talking about going to shows, and shows became different for them with that little bit of knowledge. They weren't listening to it just as a fan that has no understanding of the actual mixing and the DJing and all that stuff. And they would say like, oh, like there'd be a drop and I'd be fucking just giving her hard because I dance. I don't dance light. I dance hard. I give her, right? And they're sitting there like, ooh, that was kind of a bad mix and all this shit. I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't even hear that. But they have that little bit of knowledge that allows them to see the mistakes and see that. How has your enjoyment of the music, as you get deeper and deeper and understand the music, how has your enjoyment of just live music and shows and stuff changed?
Right. Yeah, I do. I get pretty critical. I
think it's hard not to.
Yeah, it's really hard not to. And man, like I've made a point of not listening to music on my way to work in the morning, because I mean, I take the metro the way to work, and it takes like, half an hour, 40 minutes to get there. And if I do that, I'm just gonna, it helps though. I build sets that way actually, is I just like, during the day, I'm just like on my phone. I do it on the way back home. And I'll like be on my phone listening to music, and I like DJ on Spotify basically. And I'm like, okay, let's try that. And then I'll try that at home, and like, okay, I'll put that in my set. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. But I try really, okay, this is what's a big part of me. Like I don't go to a lot of like raves or EDM shows, just because I don't really like want to be like in like the, I don't really want to be in the middle of a bunch of like fucking Molly munching chicks trying to fucking like push me out of the way and shit, you know? I'll usually be at the back or something like that. But I love seeing a lot of people having fun at a show though. That's like my favorite thing. Yeah, I do. But I actively try to not pay attention to it, because when someone shows me a song or I like listen to a song, I can see the timeline. Like I can see the fucking kick, snare, bass. I can see the groups. I can kind of see, I can see what's going on. And sometimes like I will sit down and like I'll do some active listening, and I'll like really like listen and go like, okay, he's doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this. Okay, really cool, awesome. But I still am able to like, if I go to like a friend's show, it's almost cool to not care about those like bad transitions or whatever, because like it's like DJing's fucking, I mean, I say a lot of stuff is stupid, but DJing is like, you play a song, you play another song, you listen to it, like DJing's not that hard. Like some people will tell you it's hard, but like the people that are there to see you, or like, there to like hear music, they're not going to hear your mistakes. They're not going to hear your mistakes. Only you're going to hear your mistakes. Just like say like in a stand-up set, like in a stand-up set, you only bomb if you let people know you're bombing, right? If you just like, if you forget a line or you just take a beat and you pause, or like doesn't matter if nobody's laughing. Like you just act confident and you're fine. If nobody's dancing, and Montreal's pretty guilty of that. Like Montreal is kind of a pretty like hoity-toity, like
impress me.
Like this kind of shit. It's again the mirror neuron shit. If you're having a good time, they don't really have a choice and to have a good time, you know? So yeah, I've grown. I get critical in my head, but what I actively try to remove that. And I actively try to like, because I'll go to a lot of like, most EDM shows that I go to are my friends. My friend shows, and I'm there to support them. So when they first start, there might be like 10 people dancing, and they might be doing this, but me and my friends Like, I'm fucking like mosh.
Yeah.
Come on, dude, let's go. Like, I'm there for them.
Yeah.
I'm dancing, and then other people see me having a good time, and then like, because man, I'm all about a good time, man. Like, I don't fuck if you're good or I don't.
I
care.
get that. I get that from you.
Yeah, like I'm there for you, or I'm there for the music. I don't care if you're like skilled. Like, I see, dude. Here's the thing. I don't like. I did 3 years of art school, and I don't like skill is the least cool thing to me. Like, you know, those like photorealistic drawers that like draw like a black and white pencil.
Yeah,
draw.
you can barely tell it's not real. Yeah.
Yeah, bro, go fuck yourself, man. Dude, like, take a picture, dude.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, like, do it. Like, what's more interesting to me, I guess it's just personal taste.
Yeah, 100%
comes in, but like your interpretation of it, you know, like I don't care about skill. I care about you. Like,
yeah.
And it's the same thing, say, with like graphic design or something. Like, you know, like take, you know, in like Photoshop and even in like in Premiere or whatever. And Ableton too, like you can do like stuff to the grid. Dude, take the grid off. I don't want to hear the grid. I want to hear you. I don't want to see like the graphic design and stuff. Like, I don't want to see the grid. I want to see what you got. Like, what's up? What are you playing with? You know, what's your deck? What's your hand? Right. So it's almost cool to hear someone mess up.
Yeah.
At least they're trying, right? At least like, I know you're not beat matching. At least, you know, you're having fun with it. You know?
Exactly. Like at the start of the podcast, you asked, you know, how much do you edit? And I said, my favorite podcast are the ones that edit the least bit possible. If a guest tells me that they're not comfortable, I'll take that out and I'll take out the bathroom breaks. Other than that, I want to leave in the grind. When I forget, you know, I started a whole sentence. I go, I have no idea where I was going with that. Right. Like, that's kind of embarrassing. You know, there'd be a case for some people would say you cut that out, but that's part of it. That's part of this conversation. Trying to talk to somebody for 3 hours and not fuck up once is tough to do. Right. Like, I don't want to try and bullshit people and pretend that I don't fuck up, you know, a couple times each time, right? Like, I would love to not fuck up ever, but I know that's not real, right? Like that but then when you try and present that to people as if, hey, this is my perfect self. I took all my all my ahs out of it. And every time I wasn't happy with the point I made, I just cut that whole section out, and you end up with an hour-long podcast that's really refined and quick and snappy, but I don't listen to any of those.
No. Who cares? Actually, my favorite podcast might sound a little hacky, maybe controversial to some people, but Chris D'Elia's podcast is still my favorite.
Congratulations! But I had a comedian on, a local Edmonton comedian, and he had an interaction with Chris D'Elia, and it didn't go well, and on Twitter, and he was a little sour about it, and he came out and he was talking to me, and it was a big moment because it's the first comedian I had on, and I love comedians. Like, just stand-up comedy, I hold it on. I have such a high esteem for what it is. It's like the peak of the peak. I just, it's, I can't even explain. I don't have time to explain the whole thing to you, but so I didn't want to push back.
Okay, I've got your next guest then. I know who you're going to talk to.
I'm excited. So he's talking about Chris D'Elia, and he's saying, you know, he tells a story of his experience and all this stuff. And he's just talking about like how he was saying like, his comedy is not good because it's not funny. Like, how do people find this funny? And I was thinking, like, I thought that too for a long time until I found Chris D'Elia's podcast. And yeah, it's so authentic to his humor, and his humor is so far off that if you're just coming in, you don't really know what you're getting into. It doesn't seem funny and it seems cheap. But when you understand a couple layers down, it is some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. I've laughed. I listen to hundreds of podcasts. I am obsessed. That's all I do is listen to podcasts and watch sports, right? Like, that's pretty much my entire life. And if it wasn't funny, if it wasn't good, I would have a lot to compare it to say it wasn't. It is talent and it is great. And I had to kind of sit there and like, I didn't want to be too big of a prick and be like, no, you just don't get it. Right. And totally push back in this guy's face. But like, I think Chris D'Elia is one of the funniest fucking guys ever. Right. Like, he is up there, and he's so easy to misunderstand, but that doesn't discount what he's doing. Right. Like, it's easily misinterpretable. Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally get why. And I think he comes from like a pretty, like his stand-up, I think, is pretty technical. Like his jokes, like his stand-up routine is pretty technical. And like, I find he does have that kind of like classic comedian, like he ends his bits with something that he set up in the beginning. And some people might find that like hacky or something, but the way he's funniest. I mean, I know nothing about fucking I mean, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
but is, and what I find funniest just among comedians as well is his crowd work. Like he is so good at fucking, not improv, but just like, the thing I think that makes him good is he just doesn't deal with shit. If he just doesn't take anything, and he is able to, whatever you give him, he kind of just throws it back in your face. And I don't want to meet him. Like I wouldn't want to be in a room alone with him because he would, but I mean, it would be funny. I love it when people make fun of me.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to do is like, bro, like let's sit down. I'll make fun of you. You make fun of me. That's how we get to know each other. That's fucking sick.
It's every small town in fucking Canada. That's how everything operates, at least on the male side. I can't speak for women, but growing up, that was exactly who can make fun of each other the funniest, right? And you know, it's all with love. Sometimes it goes too far or you touch that wrong button and somebody gets pissed and a punch gets thrown, but that happens. That happens. That's part of the gig.
Someone gets a black eye, the cops get called, the dad gets called, you know. Yeah, and that's why I think he really shines in his podcast, and that's why I really like his podcast.
100%.
Exactly like you said, it's unedited, and it kind of gets meta sometimes with his podcast because he says like, you know, he's like, yo, what's up? We do this shit live. And that's what people want to hear, you know, I think, and people want to hear just raw stuff. And I think he's really just honest and authentic. And you can tell he's really authentic in his podcasts. Right. And that's it. Like, you know, end of story. And he's, you know, and you can really tell a difference between, you know, before and then when he took his break. And then I
haven't listened to any of the new ones since he came back yet.
Oh, really? He talks a lot. I know a lot of people that don't like it because he kind of leans on he leans on his family a lot. And people are like, oh, you know, like he kind of like plays that like family son card to try and make him seem squeaky clean.
But that's who he always was, because I feel like what set him apart beforehand was that all these comics have this dark backstory, right? And it's so rare to have someone that has a loving family like his, you know, his dad's hilarious, his brothers are hilarious, right? Like he has that, and he doesn't have, well, maybe saying Crystal Lee doesn't have any darkness is maybe a bit of too on the nose, but that's what set him apart. And that family aspect was such a part of him and part of this comedy too. And that's where so much of it come back with. So now when he's leaning on that, he always leaned on that. And I feel like that's an easy attack vector for people to hone in on now.
Right. Yeah. But, and I can totally, like, I totally respect people's opinion if they're like, if they just hate him for like what he got accused of. And for sure, like he totally admitted it. Like, yeah, he was a piece of shit, of course. But I mean, I'm not defending him here at all, but you know, he was a fucking absolute dork, fucking weirdo dude. Gets into comedy, is really funny. He's tall. He's got a big face and a really good personality. All of a sudden he goes from loser to chick magnet in an instant, and he doesn't know what to do. And then it's that way for 10 years, you know, and that's usually when you hear a lot of, you know, cases of you know, how do I fucking say this? I don't know, of, you know, of
misconduct.
Yeah, misconduct, exactly, or you know, misdemeanors or like wrong decisions. It usually comes from men that didn't, you know, interact with women or girls in high school and
didn't make the mistakes when they're 13, so they make them at 23, and it's a different story.
Exactly. And they just don't know, and then they don't know what to do when they have all these women talking to them, and they're just uneducated and they just don't know, and it gets out of hand, right? So I totally 100% agree. I have a few friends where they're like, yeah, I just can't listen to him anymore because of what happened. And for sure, of course. Yeah.
I can respect that. Yeah, for sure. Everyone teach their own. But also on a what I throw back, I don't ever throw this back at people. I'm the same way. If you know what, you do you if you don't want to. But what I found that 90% of the time, those people that say that haven't really looked into it. They've just taken the TMZ headline as fact and didn't actually do the research into what exactly happened. And they have a bad idea of, not a bad idea, because you know what? I feel like if, unfortunately, in a case where you are in the wrong, you don't really get to set the narrative or make sure that it's fair to you because you kind of fucked up and you made a bad decision, and you're kind of at the mercy of what people are going to do and how much they're going to look into it to see actually what happened, or are they going to take whatever narrative spun for them? And that's kind of the thing you got to sit in. But if you are one of those people like probably me or you that looked more into it, right? And, you know, like I was a big fan of his and I was really disappointed when I heard this come out, and I followed it quite closely and wanted to see exactly what did he do? What did he not do? And am I okay with that? Can I go back and listen to him? Right. And I did that, and I'd be fine. It's not that I don't like him, that I haven't listened to any since he's came back. It's just, I have so many podcasts I love. It's honestly like every week it's like picking children to try and decide which ones I'm going to listen to and which ones I'm not. And it honestly kills me. And that's one of the biggest things, like, of me trying to get to the point where the podcast is my main thing and I can step back from my work. Huge, like obviously it's my dream and it's a goal and all those other things. But one of the biggest motivating factors behind all of it is just, if I can make it so that podcasting is my job, now listening to podcasts is kind of like working. So now I can add more podcast listening into my life and get paid in a weird kind of abstract sense to do what I love, which is listen to podcasts and hear these hilarious things coming out of Chris D'Elia's mouth, and then hear these absolutely mind-blowing things that are, you know, about artificial intelligence from Lex Friedman, and then, you know, hop over onto Duncan Trussell's and hear all about, you know, the spirituality of psilocybin and all this stuff, right? Like that is what I love, and that is what has changed my life, was listening to that. And that's what I want to be able to do more of, right? Like it'd be kind of similar to you. If you could get, you know, if music becomes your full on livelihood, now listening to music, creating music, anything to do with music is now your livelihood, right? Like that's kind of the same thing I'm trying to do with podcasts and where I'm trying to get with it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's
I want to ask you a question.
Hit me, baby.
I love, I'm a kind of not like an adrenaline junkie, but like I'm not really to any degree, but I loved, I like in high school and university, whenever there was like a moment to like speak in front of people, I always did it because I love the butterflies in my stomach. I love that nervous feeling, even though I hate it in the moment, I love it in the end, you know? I love feeling nervous. And every time, I haven't played that many sets, but that many being like, you know, like probably like 20 or 30 like DJ.
Good chunk.
It's not bad. It's getting there, but every time, always nerves. And it's kind of like I get off on it a little bit because I know, like, I think like, oh, this time I won't feel it, but sure enough, I do. And I know that like more, like every time I do it, I play to more and more people. I mean, like still like sometimes like I know like still I'm gonna have to play in front of like 10 people 2,000 times to play in front of 2,000 people 10 times. You know, like I'm gonna have those, you know, like stand-up shows, you know, where bowling alley where I'm talking to someone's aunt, you know.
Yeah, the Mets game is on while you're trying to do stand-up kind of shows. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
But and I know like I'm like the more and more I pursue this, the more and more like I'm gonna go like reality is gonna, life is gonna hand me like this stuff and be like, can you do this? Like, are you like, this is what you wanted?
Yeah.
You know,
are you ready for it?
Here you go. Like, are you ready? Like, this is what you wanted. And it's going to get like a bigger and bigger and bigger. So I kind of like, how do you feel about that kind of stuff? Like, are you comfortable? Like, are you fucking like balls to the wall ready to have like, you know, like some fucking, you know, like a lot of people fucking, you know, like 10,000 people fucking view a podcast, 1 million people to show, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's that's something I thought a lot about, right? Like I think you're really onto something with that line of question, because that is something I think about. And what, luckily in listening to all these podcasts, I got to kind of get a sense of what it is like to start a podcast. And what I heard from a bunch of people is the first ones are going to suck. So I was prepared for that, but I always had in my back pocket, I've had since I was a little kid, this ego, right? Like again, not to bring it right back to Ayn Rand, but that kind of Howard Roark from a little bit of knowing who you are and what your talent, like his is architecture. Mine is my brain. I was never the best athlete. I was never the best, but anything intellectual, right? Whether it's debate, whether it's same thing of you of getting in front of people and just speaking eloquently and making them feel something. I always loved that. I would always take those opportunities and I loved doing it. And I knew I had a talent for it. So I knew, and then also I had a feeling of, so now you watch the biggest names in podcasting, right? The Mark Marons, the Joe Rogans, right? These people that have eclipsed it, they've been doing it 10 years max, right? Like, and they're 50 some years old at that point. And when they started, they had nothing to go off of. They had nobody's else's lessons to learn from. So now you take me, who I've now me starting in 2020, June 21st of 2020 was when I started the podcast. The first episodes went out, right? I had thousands of hours of just Joe Rogan alone to go off of. I had hundreds of hours of this guy and that guy, and I had so much to build off of that. The way I look at it is now, I feel like I have a natural talent for this. I just think that innately, and it's kind of embarrassing to say out loud, but a podcast is kind of a, masturbatory thing to even have in the first place. So it's already, you kind of got to be all ready for that. So I thought I was, I had a feeling that if I did pursue this and I tried this, I would have a natural inkling with it. And I it might sound cocky, but I think I am. I think I have a natural proclivity to do it. And I was, from episode 1 compared to episode 75, there's a big difference. But even episode 1, for as shitty as it was, you can see the nugget of a knack for it, right? So I had that to lean on. I knew I kind of had a knack, and then I could lean on the fact that I know, compared to the Joe Rogans of the world, I have so much further of a timeline to do it, because Joe Rogan does a podcast for 30 years and he's going to be 70. I do a podcast for 30 years and I'm going to be how old Joe Rogan is now, right? So I have way more runway to work with. I have way more data to work with beforehand. I'm set up in this position, and I have I believe I have a proclivity for this. So when you take those three things together, I'm very confident of what this can be, right? And what I can take this to be. And I feel like the only thing gating me is the access to these people, right? Like you say that, and when you're saying like, are you ready to have 1 million people listening to it tomorrow? To me, I try and gate it as not even about the amount of people listening. It's about the type of guests I can have on, and am I ready to have that, right? And the biggest thing I can equate it to so far is I had these 2 authors on that I absolutely love. And it was just kind of on a whim. I thought, these guys are never going to get back to me. And I just threw one out there, and they ended up being the nicest guys. And we had a great conversation. I got to ask them all these questions about this amazing book series that I still pertain hasn't got the love it needs. It's absolutely mind blowing. It's I don't even want to get too far into. It's called the Unincorporated series. But that was such an amazing feeling to get to sit down and have a conversation and ask these questions. I would always daydream as a kid of being able to interview people and ask these questions, because I always felt like when I read everyone reads Harry Potter, but I read Harry Potter and I felt like I'm reading all these extra themes into it and things that I wonder. And I always would love to have asked J.K. Rowling, am I just imagining this, or was this kind of theme running through there, and get to ask that? I literally daydreamed about that my whole life in all these different instances. And then I actually got the opportunity to do it with these authors that I loved. And it was,
dude, that's fucking sick, dude.
It was so fucking wild. I can't even explain to you how cool of an experience that is. And even if nobody ever listens to this, if this podcast never makes $1, if I get the opportunity to do something like that every once in a while, so worth it. Like, that is the why altogether. Like, it is that in a nutshell.
So that was one of your like take my breath away moments.
100%.
One of your like I could die tomorrow moments.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I could die tomorrow. After I did that podcast, I was walking on cloud 9 and knowing that, like, in terms of, if you want to equate it to a song, it's like you writing a song that is not going to be very popular, because if you haven't read the books, this is probably not going to be the most amazing interview you've ever seen. What I hope is that my excitedness and passion for the subject matter rings through with the audience that are listening. Even if they've never read these books or heard of these authors, they'll still get a piece of that. And I hope that came through. But there's also a chance that people are like, what the fuck is this? They're talking about this book I've never read. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. But that doesn't matter, because I got the experience out of it. I don't care if nobody ever listens to it, right? Like, it doesn't matter, because I got that experience of, like, the headache of booking the podcast and getting it all set up is one thing. But as soon as the record buttons hit start and I'm in this, I am happier than I've ever been. I love this so much. Like, this is my happy place. This is me on stage DJing, right? Like, and it's not the immediate feedback, but I just enjoy it so much that it doesn't matter all the accolades and all the other stuff that come with it. That's secondary, because this is so amazing to me. I love it so much that all that stuff kind of fades into the background.
God damn, dude, that makes me so fucking happy to hear that shit, dude. I love it, dude. It makes me so happy to hear when people do shit that they love. It's like the fucking best thing, man.
Same honestly. Here.
It's like it's the point, like, why we're like, hey, why? Like, why the fuck are you doing it? You hear like examples of that, and you're like, that's just the best. It's just the best. Okay. I'm going to piss number 3, and then I want to tell you a story about FO.
Okay, perfect. And you know who has a record for the most pee breaks in an episode? FO, fucking Baby Bladder Oliver there. So we're gonna have to break that today.
Let's go. All right.
Had to lose the hoodie. It was getting too spicy in here. But then I realized I had a sleeveless shirt on, so I had to put a zip up back on so I don't look like too big of a douche nugget. Can't be going sleeveless on the pod just yet.
Not yet, eh?
Well, maybe after I finish this claw, I might go sleeveless. We'll see, but who knows? It'll be a new moment for the pod.
Well, what's the you're in where? Grand Prairie? Where are you?
Grand Prairie, yeah.
You're Calgary? Grand Prairie. Fuck yeah, dude. Wow. That was when I don't want to go too deep in this, but that was one of my first gymnastics competitions.
Oh yeah.
Was in fucking GP, man. Yeah.
Nice.
Fuck. I think that was one of the I mean, if we ever meet in person, I'll tell you all about the fucking gymnastics.
Yeah.
That was one of the first times where I got drunk, and our coach, we were like 11, bro, and like he and GP, and he got like a bunch of 11 and 12-year-olds drunk. We wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. Parents weren't happy about it at all.
I can imagine so, yeah.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, that's quite the story. Anyway, okay, so right. Let's talk about FO for a little bit here.
Oh yeah. My favorite subject.
Yeah. Growing up, I was on the French. We went to the same school for elementary, like K to 8. And I was on the French side and he was on the English side. And we never really interacted. I was a fucking super nerd. I got made fun of a lot.
For the suspenders?
No, this was before. No.
I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, see, the suspenders is what made me cool.
Actually. There you go. He's turned it all around with the suspenders.
That dude, I got pussy from suspenders.
Oh yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, not to say like Fraser never made fun of me or anything, but I like I got picked on because I was fucking into like anime and Yu-Gi-Oh and shit and
love me some Yu-Gi-Oh.
You know, fucking right. Anyway, and we never really like talk because French side, English side, and then fast forward to like. Where this is like 2, maybe 2, 3, 4 years out of university. We're like 23, 22, 23, I think. And me and my dad, we're downtown. We just come out of a movie. We've seen like, Avengers or some shit. And we get out of the movie. We're about to go back. And then I don't know if you know Johnny White. Have you heard of that dude?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in him and I were like fucking buds. Him and I were he was on the French side, and Johnny was like, "Yo, Nick, what's up?" And I haven't seen this guy in like literally 3 years, and I'm like, "Fucking yo, what's up?" We fucking meet, what's up? And then Fraser's with them, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, what's up? What's good?" And my dad's with him, and my dad knows Johnny, and my dad's like, "Oh, hey, what's up? Long time no see." And they're about to go. They're on their way to the Raven, which is the Friday night fucking bop house.
The Raven or the Monkey Tree. It's either one. I'm well versed in the UK bars or the YK, sorry.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
And it was like 9, 10 or something like that. And they were both like, yeah, man, like you want to, I did not go out. I did not go out at this point. Never gone out. Like, because before that I was in a relationship with a girl where I would go to work, do landscaping, come home, smoke weed, fuck, wake up, do it all again. I wouldn't hang out with people.
Great life.
Yeah, not bad. But this summer I wasn't with her anymore. So I didn't really have anything to do. So I was like, hey, I was gonna hang out with my dad a little more after the movie, but I was like, hey, Dad, you mind if I go fucking catch up with these dudes? And my dad's like, yeah, fucking right on. And then we're walking away, and then both Fraser and Johnny look at me, and they're like, "We're fucking rolling, dude."
I know. He told me this exact story on the phone yesterday. From the other side, I got to hear,
"We're fucking high as shit, dude." And I'm like, "Oh, dude, all right, let's go."
Yeah.
And we fucking hit the Raven, and I fucking take a bunch of Molly with him too. We have a bunch of fun, and then that was the night when it started, and then probably every Friday, Saturday night for 3 summers, it was just us fucking just having a fucking sick old time.
Yeah.
And just crunching Molly, going to the Raven, the tree, having a fucking gay old time. Just cruising through Yellowknife. And yeah, man. And dude, honestly, like it's funny because I tell people that like in elementary, like in high school, like I never really like hung out with them. But during that time, we became like so close. And we became like such good friends. And there was so many times where like we would like do like our pregame at my mom's house. And my mom is like the coolest person. We could have a whole fucking you could have a podcast.
We'll have to get her on the podcast.
Yeah. She's really cool. She was really cool with drugs. And there was one time where I don't know if fucking I can talk about this or not, but whatever.
We can always cut it out after if we want.
If she wants to, but Lorna, we bought like all of us like collectively bought just like a fucking fistful of bag of Molly. And we were like, oh, like where do we cut it up? Like where can we fucking dole it? Like this was like 2 months worth for all of us, for like the 6 of us, 7 of us, you know? I'm like, you can do it at my place. Yeah, you can do it, whatever. And she's like, are you sure? Like, yeah, it's fine. And like before we go out one night, this was kind of like the start of kind of us like pre-gaming at my mom's place. And we're kind of all there, and like my mom's having a nap, and like she comes out, and then like she walks out into the kitchen and sees Lorna just like busting up this like Mount Everest fucking Molly into pills. And my mom's like, oh, what's that? And Lorna's like,
vitamins?
Like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, Mom, that's what we call MDMA. Like it's Sesame Street or some shit. You know, and she's like, oh,
okay. All right.
As long as you're safe, you know, that kind of thing. And we just had, you know, like fucking 3 summers of just like really good hangs, man. And Fraser is just like always that dude who like, no matter what's going on, you can just be like, he's just like always there, and he's always down, and he's like, just always so whoever you are, like whoever fucking, what's your deal? If you're like with him and you can fucking, and you have a connection with him, he's there for you all the time.
100%.
He's like, no matter who the fuck you are. And I just really appreciated that. And I really found that like, so like, that's who he is, you know, like Fraser has something about him that is just like, so him. And he's just like, no matter who, like they came. So when I knew them, when I hung out with those guys, I had this like kind of rap project called Aurora Mohawk. And it was one of my friends rapping, and I did the, you know, visuals and beats and whatever.
Fraser told me a bit about that yesterday too.
Yeah, all of them were at every single one of my shows. If it was at like Folk on the Rocks or at like the Raven or at a basement show, they were always there. They were always there, dude. And I could always count on them. And they were so sick, all of them. It was so cool, man. Okay, I want to end on this because this is a hilarious fucking story. He might have told you this. But during my last, let me take a sip of wine here. This might have been one of my last times actually hanging out with them. But no, when we hung out another summer afterwards. Yeah. Well, this was like the last time. So I was like, usually when I go back to Montreal or back to wherever I'm going to university or wherever I'm going back to, in Yellowknife, I try to turn it up to 11. Like I'm not sleeping. Like I'm getting on the plane.
Going off with a bang.
Yeah, I'm getting fucked. I think we go to the tree. We get fucking blasted. And we go, all my bags are packed. We're all good. Like, I know, like I always make sure like all my shit's ready. And we go to the tree, get hosed. We go back to FO's place. Big O's there.
Oh
yeah, dude. He's got the cards ready. He's got the cards out, and it's me, Fraser, and Braden, and Big O, and he's got the cards out. And he's got the, what's it called? It's called it's a booze. London Dock. He's got the London Dock out. It's called London Dock. It's like this really brutal.
Sounds terrible.
It's fucked. It's so bad. It's pretty good, but it's like
Oliver special, hey?
Yeah, it'll make you forget who you are. So we sit down. We all sit down at the table, and we start playing cards. What we're playing, not a clue, couldn't tell you. And that's the last thing I remember, is taking a sip of this London Dock, wherever the fuck it is. And I think we're playing blackjack or some shit. Last thing I remember, and then my dad comes and gets me because my last day there, and we were supposed to go dirt biking, but I'm still hosed, and I'm like, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to drive a dirt bike. I'm
fucked up.
Yeah. It's 3 p.m. and I'm like, I'm still wasted. My flight's at 11. There's no way. I'm sorry. Maybe next time. I felt really bad. And he's like, yeah, oh, whatever. It's fine. Let's just go eat pizza. Let's go get some pizza or whatever. I'm like sick. So we go to the grocery store. I got some pizza, some wings and stuff, and we're checking out. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, Dad, like I got this. I got the pizza. And I take out my wallet. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's Big O's wallet. And I'm like, I take out and I'm like, this isn't my wallet.
Yeah.
And it's fucking Fraser's dad's wallet.
That's hilarious.
What the fuck? What's going on? And then immediately I'm like, no, this isn't good. And I immediately get on the horn and I'm like, hey, I'm coming back.
In trouble here.
I don't know what's going on. I'm so sorry. And my dad's like, what the fuck did you get into last night, man? Like, what's going on? And I drive back, and then Big O's there being like, so that's where my fucking wallet went. Hey, fuck. And then apparently, I think earlier on in the night, Braden had told me that he was missing his wallet. Okay. And then I think after I had this fucking elixir of London Dock, whatever the shit was, I think I was walking around Fraser's house, and I must have seen, because I know what Braden's wallet looked like. And so I must have seen, in my delirious state, I think I probably saw a wallet that looked like his, and I was like,
found it.
And then fucking, put that shit in my back pocket, saved it for later.
There you go.
Didn't realize until the next day.
Oh,
and man,
it was hilarious.
It was fucking my dad talking to Fraser's dad, and I'm like, man, I'm so sorry. This is so
still half cut.
Yeah, dude. No, I'm still hammered, man. It's 3 p.m.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious. Oh man, there's so many good FO stories. And that's what I was thinking. I think next time we'll have to get you and FO on the pod at the same time and get some stories bucking, because is he a special dude or what? Because it's funny to hear you say that, because that's exactly what I would, if I had to describe Fraser, and I think I probably have, if anybody wants to go back and listen to the first or second episode that Fraser's been on here. In the intro, I always try and articulate to people who Fraser is, because it's hard, because he's such a special guy in this way, but it's hard to put words to it. It's just, he's always there for you. And he is just so, doesn't give a fuck about himself. He's just always there. Like, of course, if he cares about, if you have a connection with him, he is so there for you for anything, right? Like, one night in university, I'd gone through a breakup, and I was, heartbroken, like just a mess, a bag of shit, and just an asshole about the whole thing. And it blew up into this whatever. And I only really met Fraser and become close to them. This is maybe like 6 weeks before this. Me and Fraser first like met and got to know each other. And like after Christmas break, he comes back and we start drinking. We have really fun time. We get really close really quick, but we had only known each other like closely for maybe 6 weeks at this time. Didn't really know. So me and him are going up to our other buddy's place, and we walk in the door, and our buddy comes around. And he has my ex-girlfriend's glasses on. And I hear a laugh or something around the corner. And I'm like, no fucking way. And I lose my shit. I turn around, I come over there, and I'm just seeing red, and like look at FO, and he goes, what are we doing? I was like, we're going drinking. I think he had an exam this day. He just dropped everything he did and went out and got fucking blitz with me on like a Tuesday night across the street. Cause he just said like, hey, didn't need to say anything. That sucked. I know that sucked. What do you need right now? I'm there for you. Right. Like just dropped everything. And like I said, like we were close, but I'd only known him for a couple months. But then that was like the starting place for our entire relationship. From the time we know each other, if you need anything, he is there for you. And like, fuck, it's hard to articulate to people what kind of guy he is and like what kind of morals and what, like, I can't wait to meet his parents. Cause like the way they raised that kid, fuck is he. And that's why I'm excited to bring him on the podcast more and more and more to try and show people slowly who that kid is and what he stands for and just what a fucking magic man he is. Cause I can't speak highly enough of him.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. His parents are fucking gems, man.
Oh,
100%.
that's what I hear. I've heard so many good stories about Big O and like I just
Fucking, he's the best. And man, also, dude, Lorna too, man.
oh
Lorna,
yeah,
just the
she's like
biggest.
my sister.
Man, she like because I can like look at my metrics on like on Spotify and whatever, and on Touchdown, one of my my second last release.
Second favorite song, maybe first.
Dude,
It's tight. It's tight.
thank you, man. Thank you. She has it's her the song that's in her playlist has that is responsible for like 80% of the plays of that song.
That's how I found you.
Yeah, and man, like it just that just kind of proves that like what that group of friends, like
Yeah.
means to me, like it's fucking it's sick. Every time I put out a song, all of them are like, like we can't wait to be next to you like at some fucking big show. And like it just like the support they have for you, like no matter like what happens. It's fucking sick.
Yeah. And you need that too. That's what keeps you going, right? Those people that fill you up and keep you rolling and give you that positivity to keep you all going on to the next one and the next one, right? Like you need that. And I have that with the podcast too. There's certain people that support me no matter what and are always throwing it on their Snapchat story and resharing the posts and stuff. Like there's, probably 5 or 6 people that really ride hard. And it, like I have a lot of confidence in myself. And like I said earlier, kind of talked about that confidence I've always had in myself and what I can do. But even with that huge confidence, you still hit some lows, right? Like even though I believe so wholeheartedly in what this is going to be one day, but even with that, it's still tough. And you have to lean on those people that support you and that see a small piece of what you see, because what I see is a grand plan of what it's going to be one day, but they see some small piece of it and you can tell that they recognize a piece of the magic of what you're creating. And it just makes you feel so seen and so heard. Like, oh, I can't. Yeah, it's hard to articulate to people that don't have something like this, because I'm sure you get this exact feeling of what it is to have something that you believe in so wholeheartedly and so with everything in your being, and it's more of a representation of you than anything before, and to have them support it like that, it means a completely different thing. Like the meaning that has rings through. Like it's just hard. Like I said, it's hard to articulate exactly what it is. Like that's the closest I can come to it, but it's awesome.
Yeah, man. Like every time someone like shares one of my songs on Instagram or like reposts it or whatever, it's like you probably feel this too. Like they don't know what that means to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like every time someone does that, they're like, you might as well give me $100. Like that's what it means. It's like
exactly. Yeah. Fuck yeah.
So huge, man. It's like, yeah, because that's what, like, again, what we're talking about. Like it just, you had an impact on that person.
Yeah.
Done. I fucking did it, bro. Yeah. I did it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I that much of an impact for you to want to share it for someone. Like, yeah, I know you're my friend, or like, whatever. And you feel like you have to do it, but you did it anyway,
Yeah.
So like, it's just, that's why we fucking do art, man. That's why we do art.
That is the very basis that art, that is why we have art, is because of those feelings and what that brings you. If that didn't exist, art wouldn't exist, because there'd be no evolutionary basis for people to keep doing it and keep progressing and pushing these mediums to the edges and coming up with new mediums like EDM that never existed. But once it does, now you have all these people that are pushing it out to the edges, right? It just needs to exist for people to grab onto it and run with it. And that's, that wouldn't happen without those people that support it and gas it up and give you those feelings, right? Like I told you the other day, I was trying, just on a whim, I decided to see how fast I could run a 10K. And I was struggling on the last little bit coming home, and I threw on fucking Tensor and Touchdown, right? And that's what ran me home, right? And I told you that, and you said like, that means a lot to me, right? And I know, because right? Like that's awesome. But like, wow, it's because I love, but it's because I love those fucking tunes, right? When I'm dying, I'm fucking, 35 minutes into a 10, I'm 8 kilometers into a 10K, running as far as I can. And I go to my phone to find the tunes that are going to fire me up, right? That's what I went to, right? And that's awesome. Wow. And I wasn't even thinking about it in terms of how that would make you feel in the moment. I was just fucking trying not to die and trying to find something to fire me up. But like, it's cool to have that effect after, because when I said that to you, it's funny because I know exactly what that means, because I experienced that too when people tell me about the podcast. But even still, in that moment when I was telling you, I wasn't even thinking about the impact it'd have on you. I was just kind of letting you know, like, oh, just by the way, this happened. And then when you responded back, like, hey, that means a lot to me, it kind of struck me, because you almost typed back exactly what I typed to people, like, hey, like, really, thanks for that. Like, you don't know what that means, kind of thing. And it's like, oh, I did that for other people, you know, like I know what this feels to be on the other side of it. And it fills you up and it makes you want to support more people. And now I'm that guy. Somebody, you know, starts a YouTube channel to do their woodworking. I am gassing them up and fucking don't quit, keep going, right? Like I am that guy to want to lift everybody up because you get to see what it feels like when other people do that for you. Right. And you just got to hold on to that. And even if you get to those huge heights, you want to hold on to that and keep being that for other people. Right. That's the end game. That's what everyone should be after.
Man, you're gonna make me fucking cry, dude.
Hey, fuck, that's what we're after here. Couple White Claws, a couple tears. What more can you ask out of a podcast, right?
Fuck. Let's go.
Well, we're gonna have to do probably like 2 or 3 of these because we've already done almost 3 hours, and I have so many more questions. Like, I'm so curious to ask about like the visualization and what goes into that. Like when you're putting on a show and the visuals that go into that. I want to talk about like producing versus DJing and the skills that go into it. Growing up in Yellowknife, I have so much shit here that I haven't asked you about. Is there any...
Let's schedule another one in like around like November or something.
Yeah, for sure. And if before then we can get you and FO on, we might have to do like a little earlier one to get both the boys on, because I think we would.
Yo, let's go.
Yeah, we'll get her ripping. Hey,
fucking rights. Yeah, dude, fucking rights. Let's go.
So when's the next single coming out? When you dropping more shit?
Well, okay, so the next single is, if I'm gonna be, let's see, the next single is gonna come out on, I don't know when this is gonna come out, but it's gonna be dropping July 9th.
July 9th. Okay, well maybe I'll try and drop this episode right around then, so it's like right before the episode or right before the song comes out, right after, and we'll line it up so it lines nicely with it. And
oh yeah, okay, sick. So yeah, the single is coming out July 9th. If it's before then. The single's called Polymer, and it's like it's a drum and bass track, more or less. You want to run, like, dude, this song's gonna make you want to do fucking 50K, man.
All right. I'll hold you to that. Fuck yeah. Okay, well that's awesome. And if you want to go listen to it, I wanted to ask you all about like uploading, because that was something that I really didn't understand of what it goes through to upload a podcast and like get it into all these registries and shit. And I was thinking, how the fuck do you upload music? Like, how do you get music on Apple Music and that kind of shit? Like, is Spotify the best way? Is there certain platforms that do better for you? Like, if as an artist, do you want people to listen to you somewhere over other places, or what?
Well, I mean, Spotify's the biggest one, but what you do, if you want to like just get everything on anywhere, you need like something called an aggregator. And there's a bunch of them. There's like DistroKid, CD Baby, and there's a local one called Lander that I used up until now. But if I made a few stories about it, where Lander is cool. They're really cool. They're all about like community and collabing, which is sick. Awesome. I want to support like Montreal companies, but they don't offer, it's very difficult for them for some reason to offer Spotify pre-saves. And Spotify pre-saves are like the backbone of why you put out a release, because when you do a Spotify pre-save, when people pre-save it signals to Spotify that like, oh shit,
they're
like,
really excited about this. It's like pre-orders on books, they say, are like if you want to see what's going to be a successful book, it's the amount of pre-orders they have on Amazon. It's like 90% of the metrics.
Yeah. Like, you know, also like peak capitalism, like something sold before it's even out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a strong signal.
Yeah. But like, you know, and then the algorithm goes like, oh, okay, I'm going to show this to everybody. But what happened with Lander is I asked them I had to make my own pre-save link, and I had to ask them for this like fucking, it was called like a Spotify URI code. I asked them for it. I tested it out. It was the wrong one. And then I asked them again for it, and I tested it, and it looked like the right one. But then when I went to use it, it wasn't the right one. And it like brought people to some like fucking obtuse, like shitty rapper. Then that's when the day like Tensor came out, I made a post being like, all right, sorry, but like, fuck you, Lander. You can fucking suck my fucking left dick. You don't offer fucking pre-saves. Like,
brutal.
This is why like most people do this shit, you know? Anyway, but yeah, so now I'm only doing stuff through a DistroKid. DistroKid is like one of like the biggest like monopoly Walmart ones, but like you need, it just has better
features.
Yeah. You need what you need. Right. So, yeah.
So like sounds like everybody that's listening to this right now needs to go pre-save. I already forgot the name of the song. I'm an asshole.
Polymer. Yeah.
Polymer. Fuck me. I don't know what I said. I was going back to What was that? What was the program you said you make the sounds in? Ethereum? No.
Serum.
Serum. That's what I was saying. I almost threw that out there. I was like, that's not right. Oh, so Spotify's good. Everyone's going to go pre-save it on Spotify right now. And once it's out, pretty much anywhere they listen to is all good. As long as they find it and start fucking jamming it and jam it loud, that's pretty much all that matters.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Just fucking listen, like when you're working out, you're running from your fucking ex, you're going to run to a date. You want to run away from your family.
Mhm.
It's a running song. It's like kind of like I made it in the kind of headspace of kind of, running into your own head to kind of heal yourself a little bit. Like instead of like looking outward to shit, like, it's important to look outward, but like a lot of times you got to look inside yourself to heal yourself a little bit. And this is where I kind of was like, where I was at with the song. And I guess it's called Polymer, just because it's kind of like, it's about kind of what like glues you together. Also, Polymer is just kind of like a lot of like Sidechick stuff kind of stems from a lot of like math and biology and your science terms a little bit. We could probably talk about this later, but a lot of my like visual aspect, like my visual branding for Sidechick is this little dude, as you've probably seen, this like little guy that exists in this like Dr. Seuss world.
Yeah, and it's almost fractal a little bit, but not as a little more random than fractal. Like it's almost like fractal but without the uniformity. And this is me putting my own shit on you. You tell me what it's about, but that's what I get from it.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it's like this kind of like entity, like this kind of like mean, angry entity that exists in this world where like he is everything and everything is him, and he can like kind of
Does he have a name?
Self. No, not yet. I don't know if I don't know if he has a name yet or not. Or
he might make himself a name at some point in the future.
Exactly, dude. Yeah, exactly. Totally. And he's like,
I dig it.
Like he's kind of like separate from me a little bit, and he's always mad. He's always like pissed a little bit, because a lot of like my sound design is kind of like angry and like chugging, and it's very like aggressive. And he's always kind of like got like a confused or mad or like perplexed face a little bit. And a lot of that shit actually comes from, I used to play Smash a lot, and I used to main Duck Hunt in Smash Ultimate.
Gotcha.
And Duck Hunt just has, like, I like cartoons like Beavis and Butthead. I grew up on Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy, and King of the Hill and fucking Yu-Gi-Oh and fucking all like just cartoons in general. And I love like stuff that goes like boing, bam, like boing and shit like that. And a lot of my sound design comes from. Yeah. It's just like cartoon sounds and shit like that. So that's where like the kind of Dr. Seuss element comes from.
For sure.
Aspect. Anyway. Yeah, man.
So like it was, so I know I keep saying we're going to end this and I have more questions and more questions. I keep running this out, but I'm curious. So then when you do the visualizations, again, I'm probably going to take this into another fucking 15-minute rabbit hole here, but I'm so curious. So when you're doing a DJ set and you have the visualizations behind you, I'm just every 10 seconds that goes by, I think of more questions I want to ask. I'm wondering if I should even jump down this rabbit hole, but I'm curious, how structured do you have a set? Because we talked about earlier about having to match the crowd and kind of go with them and feed off of their vibes. But then the visualizations are probably matched to what you're going to play. Do they change like when you're playing, or are they kind of, they'll match more, like you can play certain songs that also match up to it, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, depends on the set, like, because I know if I'm going to play a show to like people that are coming to see an EDM show, or if I'm playing like an art gallery, or like if I'm playing like a show that like people are coming to see something else, and I'm like, am I the main music or am I the background music?
Right.
If I'm the main music, then it's going to be like super aggressive, like bass music and dubstep, and like, because people are there to get fucked up. But if I'm the background music, I'm going to play some kind of like lo-fi house, or some kind of like maybe some like Brazilian samba or some shit, like to get people in the mood. Yeah. But it really depends. It kind of depends. And if I'm going to plug anybody, the the girl, the artist that is responsible for all my visuals, her name is Puppy. And you can like just go on my Instagram and you can like look her up through there. But she's just like an incredible visual artist. She's really cool. She's really dope. Like fucking go like her shit, buy all of her fucking shit. It's really cool. And I mean, like we work together on it, and I've worked together on kind of like guiding her through like what I wanted, like through my vision.
What you see when you hear the music.
Yeah.
And then she does her interpretation on it.
Yeah, like so we went to school together. We went to art school together, and we never really talked, but I always loved her vision. And then when I needed a visual identity for a Sidechick, I was just kind of obvious. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to you because you're just like so dope. And every time like I need a new album cover, I need a new, a visual system for something. It's really cute because she's always like so nervous. She's like, oh no, I'm gonna do such a bad job. And then she comes up with this like
knocks it out of the park.
Shit. Yeah, it's insane. And I always she's like always so nervous to like show it to me. And I'm always like, I know that's a good thing that you're nervous, because if you weren't nervous, then you wouldn't care about it. Like I know you care about it because you're nervous and you're apprehensive about it. But like, I'm pretty like blunt with her. Like I'll say like, I like that. I don't like that. And like, let's go more in this direction. But she's just like, she's really sick. She also does, visual work for a guy that you've probably seen in a lot of my stories, and who's on Touchdown, Fireball Kid.
Yeah.
You should for sure. You're gonna have him on for a podcast. He's
for sure
fun to talk to. Like he and I are kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Is that who you do the podcast with, or was he on that same podcast?
We did have a podcast with Fireball Kid. That was like maybe the fourth or fifth one.
I feel like as I was scrolling through today to watch a couple of episodes, I saw it pop up, and I wasn't sure if that was the guy that I saw you with, or if he was just a guest on that one. But
yeah, because we shared because we started hanging out just by virtue of just like DMing each other on Instagram, and we found that we just had the same sense of humor and same sense of music and same just taste, and then we just ended up doing a bunch of drugs and drinking together, and then
that's how it always goes, hey?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good shit. Man. That's awesome. Fuck. I mean, yeah. So then just to finish out my question on the visualization. So then is that something that you go in, kind of address what you think the set's going to be like on my background, on my foreground, and then build a visualization that goes with it? Or do you have like kind of visualization that goes with each song? Like, I'm just trying to think, like when I go see these DJs go and they have this amazingly elaborate light show and visualizations that go with their music, but also there's this element of randomness of, do they know what they're exactly going to play? Like, what if in that moment the crowd wasn't digging the set you're playing, you had to switch it up? Like, are the visuals not going to match what you're playing now? Like, I'm always so curious about that.
Yeah. So it really depends. Like, if you're going to go see, like, if you're at, it's very I mean, it's not complex, but it's very situational. Like, if you're going to go see like a big name, they're not, unless you're seeing like Deadmau5, where he literally creates his own visuals in Touch Designer and in Maya and in Blender and stuff. And he has his shit, like whenever a MIDI kick happens, a square gets bigger, like it's very synced. Like he's super fucking techy about it. And that's like, it's fucking sick. To go see a Deadmau5 show is insane, just because of like, the amount of
the experience that creates,
prep, and it's so immense. But if you go see like a regular, whatever, not run of the mill dubstep show, but like any other kind of like EDM show or whatever, like at some kind of club, they will give their visuals to the light guy or the visual guy.
Oh.
Plug the USB stick in, and then they'll have probably like a program called like Resolume or Modulate, and they plug, there's probably maybe like 15, 16, 20 like 8-second loops of visuals, and then they'll play them. Like, light guys are good at knowing what is a drop and what's not, and like what song is what, and then they can tell kind of like what goes with what. And
100%.
Yeah. And so like if it's like a big like event, like like Rogers Arena, like Dylan Francis or some shit like that. Like they might have certain songs where like certain big songs have a big drop and there's like words attached to the song or whatever. Like if it's like Skrillex, Diplo, and Justin Bieber, that kind of shit,
Yeah.
there's gonna be
Roger Waters
first. Yeah.
Did you go see Roger? Oh, I guess you weren't in Edmonton. I guess I was gonna say, because I went and saw Roger Waters a couple of years ago at Rogers, and it was one of the fucking coolest things I've ever witnessed in my life. Oh, it was amazing.
Fucking killed to see that, man. That must have been sick.
It was
great, bro. Fucking what, like 200,000 people or some shit, dude? That must have been insane. That must have been religious.
It was so wild. And like, and just the experience that they brought out. So like when they did the wall, they had all these like local Edmonton kids that come out and like with bricks and like are building a wall as they're doing the song. They had like this giant blimp, like pig that went around. They had so like screens on the screen, but then also like screens that went all the way down, like long ways, like hot dog ways down the arena too. So that you're also seeing. So when they did, I can't remember what song it was, but they had like the whole factory, like along the whole thing, like with the stacks and like smoke, like it was so far away from any other musical experience I'd seen because there was so much more to it. Like, it's hard to articulate just what it was that show. Like what I want to do is find like that tour they did with all the effects and stuff on like a DVD and rewatch it and try and like remember all the feelings I was feeling just to articulate it to people again. Like, cause it was almost like, it was so intense the whole time, start to finish. You almost don't even know what you're expecting. You just remember the feeling that it gave you, right? And then you leave and you're like, that was fucking wild. I don't know what happened, but that was fucking wild. Like, that was the feeling I remember leaving with.
Imagine, man. Dude, even in like when they were on their Animals tour in like the mid-70s, like they had shit flying all over the fucking place.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
He fucking freaked out, dude. Like, cause I would have been like, you can imagine like 16-year-olds doing acid for the first time at a Floyd show in 1975. And they're seeing like a giant pig come after them,
Yeah. Oh man.
Christ.
Fuck. Well, I think me and you are gonna have to go see some shows too, because it sounds like me and you would fucking be two peas in a pod out on the D floor there. I mean, it sounds like you and Fraser have ripped up some dance floors, and you haven't seen me out on that D floor yet, and it's pretty. We talked about religious experiences earlier, and that has been quoted to me as a religious experience to see me on the dance floor. So. We'll have to. We got podcasts, we got shows, we got dance floors, we got a lot of shit to do here.
Yeah, we got a lot of catch up to do, eh?
Oh, yeah. Fuck. Well, I'm glad I finally met you. I've heard a lot of good stories now, and a lot of good people speaking in your behalf, and I'm really excited to see what you do. The compliment you gave me earlier about just enjoying somebody that's passionate about something and that believes in it. That's why I feel so lucky to do this, because I just get to have people like that on time after time and get them to hear in their own words what makes their unique thing they're chasing special to them. And I'm so interested. When you were talking earlier about, the intricacies of the compression and all that stuff, and you're saying like it might be boring, I was so enamored because I could see the passion that you have for it. And I am, I might not know a thing about it, but when somebody's passionate about something that real way, I lock in like it's so interesting. So thank you so much for taking me through that. We'll have to do it again multiple times, because I swear to you, I got through maybe half the questions I wanted to ask, and I had a fucking amazing time. I crushed some beers, crushed some claws, and I can't speak highly enough. That was so much fucking fun.
I think we did it because I think my wine bottle's empty.
There we go. That's good timing. That's the timing metric.
Fucking right, bud.
Anything else we missed? Anything else we need to cover? Or should we fucking wrap her up?
I don't know, man. I think we're good, man. I think we're good. I think we just got to. I think we got to go for a round 2 at some point. I think
100%. Round 2, round 3, round 4. Fuck, we're gonna have to do a bunch of these. I plan on doing this podcast for a lot of years, so we're gonna have a lot of pods, and you're gonna be playing fucking giant shows, and I'll have you on after to see what it was like, and we'll be crushing it, brother. Crushing it.
What's up, dude? What's up? Let's go.
All right. Thanks again, Nick. That was awesome.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it a lot, man. I love being on. Yeah, if anybody wants to check me out, _Sidechick_ on Instagram. Check me out on Spotify, Sidechick. I'd love to see you at my show. If you're fucking goofy and weird, you'd love my shit.
100%.
Let's go.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. All right. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Peace.
All right, I'll try and keep this outro a little shorter because I know that was a long episode, but it was full of laughs and full of really good information and full of good stories and maybe a lesson or two. I don't really remember. I was pretty drunk on it, to be honest with you guys. But all I remember from the podcast was just how it made me feel and how happy it made me and how much humor was brought out in it and just how excited I am to follow Nick's journey and see where he goes. Also, great name. I don't know if I dropped that in the intro, but another solid flag bearer in the name of Nick. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Please go follow Nick on Instagram. It's _Sidechick_ is the name on Instagram. Go follow him on Spotify. Download all his songs. Really support him. Tell him that you heard him here. And can't wait to maybe get out to Montreal and meet Nick in person and go have a couple drinks with him and maybe do this all again in person, because I thought that was one of the funnest episodes I've ever recorded, and really inspires me to bring on more like this and to really keep pushing the boundaries of what type of people I have on and what type of conversations can be have. Because it's fun to do really deep intellectual conversations, but then it's fun to just rip into a bottle of wine and talk some shit like that. Like, oh man, that was awesome. And I'm so thankful that I get to do whatever I want to do with this podcast. And I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. And if you do enjoy this type of episode specifically, let me know, because it's cool to see what people like and don't like. And I know everyone's different and it's not going to impact a huge change in me right away, but it'd be nice to know kind of which ones are hitting and which ones aren't. So please reach out if you have any sort of feedback, and enjoy your weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday for another great episode.